Get a load of this guy! He may seem like somebody who couldn't lift a finger against anyone.
So, I'm Kiyotaka Ayanokoji. I can't wait to study with you.
But believe me, he is badass enough to beat the crap out of anyone.
Why would a mundane task like this make me feel anything?
And clever enough to outsmart them with his brilliant mind games.
If you do have a really good reason, you are allowed to switch. Our leader's health was failing. That's as good a reason as any. Because of that, when Ryuen and Katsuragi named you Class D's leader, they were wrong. It was me.
That's right, I'm talking about Kiyotaka Ayanokoji from Classroom of the Elite. This is an amazing anime with a heck of a lot of mind games and, of course, plenty of twists. And since Season 4 of the anime just wrapped up, I thought, hey, why not give you guys the complete story so far? Let's go ahead and get right into it. Classroom of the Elite kicks off with the introduction of Kiyotaka Ayanokoji, a shy and introverted student who doesn't like to be in the spotlight. Ayanokoji is on a bus heading to his first day of school. Right then, he sees a girl, possibly going to the same school, trying to find a seat for an old woman. There are several other students on the bus, but none of them give the old woman their seat. That's awful. Moving on, it's a special day for Ayanokoji because he's just enrolled into Class 1D at Tokyo Metropolitan Advanced Nurturing High School. This is actually a super serious and prestigious government-run institution that's created to train Japan's most talented students. However, before even stepping inside the school premises, Ayanokoji is confronted by Suzune Horikita, who is a very smart girl, but also very, and I mean very, antisocial and outspoken. Apparently, Suzune is pissed at Ayanokoji because the dude was staring at her on the school bus. Ayanokoji clarifies that he was only staring at her because, just like him, Suzune also didn't want to give up her seat. Tja, take it easy, Suzune. He's not creepy, just kinda selfish. Anywho, after a great first impression, Ayanokoji enters the school and listens to a speech by Manabu Horikita, a very serious third-year student who's also the student council president. Manabu, who is Suzune's older brother, welcomes the newcomers on their first day. Oh, maybe this school isn't so scary after all. Now, cut to the classroom, where we meet all the students of Class 1D. First, there's the handsome one with blonde hair, Hirata Yosuke. Then we have Kikyo Kushida, a friendly and cheerful girl who will definitely get along with everyone easily. Oh, also, she's the same girl who was helping the old woman on the bus. And of course, we also have Suzune in the same class. But it seems like for now, she doesn't like Ayanokoji at all. Anyway, before other students can introduce themselves, Sae Chabashira, Class D's strict homeroom teacher, arrives to surprise the students with her dominating aura. Right then, Sae reveals that for the next 3 years, these students cannot contact the outside world. That's not as bad as it sounds though, because from a movie theater to a shopping mall, everything they could possibly need is inside the school campus. Then, Sae explains the school's point system to the students. Apparently, every student receives 100,000 private points each month that can be used like real money, with 1 point equaling 1 yen. So, they can buy whatever the hell they want using these points. Jeez, I wish my school gave me an allowance. Now, while shopping for some important stuff, Ayanokoji comes across his classmate Ken Sudo, who gets pissed at some senior students for being cocky. However, Ayanokoji decides it's best not to interfere. Yeah, good call. Also, for some reason, or destiny, Ayanokoji keeps running into Suzune. who still doesn't like the dude. However, even though it's just trash talking, Ayano Koji is the only person Suzune talks to. So, Kushida reaches out to Ayano Koji to see if he can help her become friends with Suzune. Apparently, Kushida has been talking to everyone except Suzune, and she really wants to befriend everyone. She's taken people pleaser to a whole new level. After class, Ayano Koji invites Suzune to join him at the cafe, hoping it will open her up. Also, Ayano Koji has secretly arranged for Kushida to be at the cafe. Not a good idea, dude. As expected, after arriving at the cafe, Suzune instantly sees through Ayano Koji's plan. And, well, after giving cold shoulder to both Ayano Koji and Kushida, Suzune just leaves. Moving on. Just like this, the entirety of April goes by, and Ayano Koji notices that most of the students in Class D spend their points like they're dang millionaires. They barely put any effort into their studies and don't even bother attending classes. But what's strange is that the school never punishes them or even warns them about his behavior. So, Ayano Koji wonders if the school is hiding something about this whole point system. Yeah, what is up with that? Then, on May 1st, Ayano Koji and the rest of his classmates learn the harsh truth. Class D students, shockingly, won't receive their monthly allowance for May. Uh-oh. That's when Sai explains the real purpose of the point system. Apparently, the monthly points are based entirely on merit, and since the class neglected their studies and behaved like a bunch of morons the previous month, Class D earned 0 points for the new month.
As it stands now, we think you're all garbage. You're worth nothing, so you get nothing.
So, yeah, kids, if you're lazy and spoiled, get ready to face consequences. The second episode kicks off with Class D students completely shocked after losing their monthly allowance. Sai then reveals that the 4 first-year classes are ranked by merit, with Class A as the highest and Class D the lowest. This is called the S system. Basically, each class is awarded points based on merit, and in the first month, Class D earned 0 points, while Class A got 940. Oh, damn! Sai also explains that each class point contributes to 100 individual student points. To keep it simple, if Class D earns 1 class point in a given month, each student will be given 100 private points to spend. Sai further reveals that by earning enough points, Class D can eventually rise in the ranks to become the new Class C, and so on. But to do that, they will have to perform well and stop acting like senseless brats. Finally, Sai says that given the class's current situation, any student who fails one more exam will be expelled from the school. Uh-oh. Now that everyone has gotten the much-needed reality check, most of the Class D students start taking their studies seriously. There are a few exceptions though. Ken Sudo, the hot-headed basketball player who really ain't all that great at studies. There's also Kanji Ike, the carefree and somewhat immature dude, and Haruki Yamauchi, another clown who rarely takes things seriously. But of course, the entire class needs to do well to earn their monthly allowance and be promoted to Class C. Suzune decides to treat Ayano Koji to an expensive lunch so they can discuss a strategy. Oh, so now you wanna talk. Alright. Suzune then decides that the 3 morons who aren't taking this seriously need help. So, she tries to bring them into a study group at the library. Ah, smart. Ayano Koji and Kushida somehow manage to get the 3 boys to show up. Unfortunately though, the plan falls apart almost immediately when these 3 idiots just leave. Before leaving though, Ken clarifies that he has no interest in studying, believing he'll become rich by going pro in basketball. Bro thinks he's LeBron James or something. Later that night, Ayano Koji heads out to get a drink and overhears Suzune talking with her council president brother Manabu. However, the conversation between the brother and sister duo becomes rather tense when Manabu criticizes Suzune for isolating herself from others. Manabu says to his sis that being alone doesn't mean being independent. In fact, Manabu thinks this very mindset is why Suzune ended up in Class D. Dude, that is no way to talk to your little sister. Shockingly, the conversation gets so intense that at one point, Manabu suddenly moves to attack Suzune. Fortunately though, Ayano Koji steps in and stops the big brute. In fact, Ayano Koji very easily dodges Manabu's strikes. But too bad this isn't boxing school. Manabu, impressed by Ayano Koji, asks the boy whether he's learned martial arts. But Ayano Koji isn't interested in answering questions right now. During the conversation, Manabu recalls Ayano Koji's academic records. Apparently, Ayano Koji scored exactly 50 points on both his entrance exam and a recent quiz. Exactly 50? That's strange. Manabu believes that such consistent scores couldn't be a coincidence, so he asks whether Ayano Koji did it intentionally. However, Ayano Koji says it's luck and nothing else. Yeah, right. Regardless, Manabu is surprised that Suzune made a friend. However, Suzune instantly says, "Nah, we ain't friends." Really? Even after Ayano Koji saved your ass? Naturally, Manabu gets disappointed and just leaves after giving a big sigh. Afterward, Suzune awkwardly apologizes to Ayano Koji for what happened, but Ayano Koji doesn't care. Suzune then brings up Ayano Koji's impressive fighting skills. However, instead of revealing how he learned all that, Ayano Koji says that he spent a lot of time working at tea ceremonies.
Your skills.
It's just piano and tea ceremony.
You said it was calligraphy.
Dude, that is completely unrelated to fighting. Right then, Suzune realizes that Ayano Koji is truly hiding something about his past. Guy's a total mystery. Now, Ayano Koji asks Suzune if she's already given up on those 3 Class D morons who don't want to study, and Suzune replies that she's done with those 3. Moving on, the midterm exams arrive, and this time Class D performs surprisingly well. How the hell did they pull that off? The third episode kicks off with every Class D student passing the test. Well, almost every student. And I've got a hunch on who's holding them back. Anywho, then we learn that the class didn't exactly pass due to hard work and perseverance. Apparently, 3 days before the exam, Ayano Koji purchased old test questions from an upperclassman and paid 15,000 points for them. Also, it turns out that by doing this, Ayano Koji didn't break any rule. This strategy was completely legitimate. Really? My teacher would've whooped my ass if I did this in school. Regardless, the old tests did help Class D pass the exam. Now, we jump back to one of the days leading up to the exam. While trying to recruit Ken to the study group, Ayano Koji finds the guy being harassed by students from Class C. That's when Kakeru Ryuen, the cocky leader of Class C, steps forward and starts mocking Ken for being a failure. That's not nice, man. But right then, Honami Ichinose, a kind and well-respected student from Class B, steps in to stop the Class C goons. Honami threatens to report the incident to security, so Kakeru and his gang get the hell out of there. Back in the present, we learn that while every student passed the exam, Ken didn't. Also, what's shocking is that Ken falls short by just 1 measly point. But that still means that he'll be expelled. Aw, come on. Later, Ayano Koji meets Sai to discuss this whole Ken situation. Surprisingly, Ayano Koji offers to use his own points to save Ken from expulsion.
Sell me a point on that test to add to Pseudo's score.
However, a single point for Ken will cost 100,000 points. That is outrageous. Obviously, Ayano Koji doesn't have enough to pay such a hefty sum, so Suzune unexpectedly steps in and offers 50,000 of her own points. Aww. Well, Sai accepts the deal and tells Ayano Koji and Suzune to inform Ken that he's safe. Elsewhere, we meet two students and class representatives from Class 1A, Katsuragi and Arisu. Interestingly, these two are worried about the midterm scores. While Class A is still on top for now, Katsuragi and Arisu are worried as Class C is slowly gaining on them. Moving on. Later that night, Kushida organizes a small celebration party in Ayano Koji's room, even though Ayano Koji doesn't like playing host even for a minute. But hey, a cute girl asks you to do something, you sure as heck better do it. As everyone enjoys themselves, Kushida asks if it was Ayano Koji who saved Ken's ass from expulsion. However, Ayano Koji gives all the credit to Suzune. After the party ends, Kushida heads home, but Ayano Koji realizes that Kushida accidentally left her phone behind. So, Ayano Koji starts following her, but then he sees Kushida showing a completely different side of her personality. The sweet little girl instantly becomes really mean and rude, taking out her frustration by saying some really bad things about Suzune. What in the hell is going on? Ayano Koji sees the entire thing and is shocked to his core. So yeah, Ayano Koji now knows Kushida's dirty little secret. Unfortunately though, Kushida realizes this and threatens him not to reveal this secret to anyone. Kushida also says that if Ayano Koji even opens his mouth about this, she'll accuse him of assaulting her.
I'll tell everyone in the entire school you attempted to me.
But you know that isn't true.
What the actual This little psycho even forcibly grabs Ayano Koji's hand and makes him touch her chest, intending to use his fingerprints as evidence. Nah, really, that's just evil. Shockingly though, Ayano Koji remains calm throughout this entire ordeal, and he assures Kushida that he won't tell her secret to anyone. So, well, Kushida promises to leave Ayano Koji alone for now. The fourth episode takes us to Class 1B, one of the school's top-performing first-year classes. There, we again see Honami. Yeah, the kind girl who saved Ken from Class C goons. Apparently, Honami has only one goal, to lead every member of Class B all the way to Class A. And that's why she's been helping every Class B student in their studies. That's actually really kind. Later, Honami rushes into Kushida and Ayano Koji and asks whether Class D has received its monthly points yet. However, Kushida and Ayano Koji can't answer that yet because they haven't received any points. A few days later, Honami approaches Ayano Koji with a rather surprising personal request. Honami explains that someone may ask her out on a date soon, and she doesn't have time for this dating nonsense. So, Honami asks Ayano Koji to pretend to be her boyfriend so she can reject the person without hurting their feelings. Oh, well, yeah, okay, that's one way to do it. Clearly, Ayano Koji isn't sure about all this, but Honami reveals that the person who wants to confess to her is actually one of her close female friends. So yeah, this entire situation is really awkward. In that very moment, that same friend of Honami arrives on the scene. Uh-oh. Now, the person who likes Honami is Chihiro Shiranami, who asks if Ayano Koji is Honami's boyfriend. At this point, Chihiro is already hurt, but then Ayano Koji shocks Chihiro and Honami, saying, "Nah, we're just friends." Dude. Ayano Koji then points out that Chihiro clearly struggled to confess her feelings, so Honami should at least give her friend a sincere answer. Oh, wow, yeah, that's actually right. After being such a wise ass, Ayanokoji leaves the scene. A short while later, Honami meets Ayanokoji to thank him for his honesty and for helping her. Turns out, Honami honestly told Chihiro that she didn't share her romantic feelings. However, the two agreed to remain friends. Moving on from that, in July, Class D learns that their point distribution has been frozen again. Oh my god, what now? Well, it has everything to do with the fight between Ken and the 3 students from Class C the other day. Apparently, 2 of those Class C students are members of the basketball team, and according to the school's report, Ken started a fight with them. Obviously, Ken screams his lungs out that it was self-defense, but that's of no use. Now, Class D must produce a witness during the disciplinary hearing next week. Also, if Class D loses, they'll lose all of their points for the month. You have gotta be kidding me! So, Class D begins searching for any witnesses to defend Ken during the hearing. Surprisingly, Class B also decides to help Class D because Honami wants to repay Ayanokoji for his kindness. After a while, Ryuji Kanzaki, a serious and dependable student from Class B, gives some good news to Honami. Ryuji tells Honami that an anonymous student provided some information about Daichi Ishizaki, one of the students involved in the incident. During all of this mess, Ayanokoji notices something shocking on Honami's phone. Interestingly, this girl's been sitting on over 2.5 million points. Dude, she's freaking rich! Afterward, Suzune meets Ayanokoji and reveals that Aira Sakura, a shy and timid girl from Class D, saw Ken's fight with the Class C goons. Not only that, but she also captured the entire incident on her camera. So, there's your evidence, Ayanokoji. The next day, Kushida approaches Sakura and asks for the video evidence. But, for some reason, poor Sakura starts running away and drops her camera. Yeah, the very camera holding the evidence that could clear Ken's name. And now, the damn camera won't turn on. The 5th episode begins with Ayanokoji and Kushida taking Sakura to an electronics store on campus to try and get her camera fixed. Fortunately, the damage is covered under warranty. Oh, thank God. Now fix the damn thing! At the store, they meet Yukitsu, the clerk who seems like a total pervert. Yukitsu asks Sakura for her contact information so the store can notify her when the camera is ready. However, Sakura gets too nervous, so Ayanokoji provides his own contact information instead. Back at the dorms, Kushida and Ayanokoji go through some pictures of Sakura and learn that she's actually a popular internet model.
Do you think it's her then?
Well, it could be. I thought it was strange that she was wearing fake glasses, but now it makes perfect sense.
They're fake.
There was no distortion behind the lenses.
Ah, I wonder if that's why the store clerk Yukitsu was being such a creep. He probably recognized her. Anywho, now we move to the disciplinary hearing, which is overseen by Manabu. Now, both Class C and Class D present their testimonies and start accusing each other. But then, Suzune says it doesn't make sense that Ken beat up 3 strong guys on his own. That's right, it was 1v3 and Ken is no Jack Reacher. The next moment, Suzune brings forward Sakura as a witness. Sakura explains that she captured part of the entire fight. The girl provides the memory card that contains the pictures from the fight. But not only that, the card also has some private and daring pictures of Sakura. The kind you don't usually show at school disciplinary hearings. However, Sakura is willing to show these photos to prove that Ken is innocent. That's great and all, but the evidence still doesn't prove that Ken acted in self-defense. At that point, Kazuma Sakagami, the homeroom teacher of Class C, proposes a compromise. He suggests suspending Ken for 2 weeks while suspending the 3 Class C students for 1 week each. Of course, that seems unfair, so Class D naturally refuses the deal. Realizing that this is going nowhere, Manabu decides to end the hearing for the day. Manabu announces that he'll make his final decision the following day unless he receives some additional evidence. The 6th episode begins with a look into Sakura's life. Apparently, the poor girl has been receiving creepy letters from an obsessed fan. That is why Sakura has been acting scared and running away from people. She is under a lot of stress right now. Later, Ayano Koji meets Sakura and thanks her for trying to help in Ken's case. Right then, Sakura gathers the courage to ask Ayano Koji something important. But before she can, Ayano Koji receives a message from Kushida, so Ayano Koji leaves in a rush. Soon afterward, Suzune and Ayano Koji confront the 3 Class C pricks who accused Ken and point out the security cameras in the area. According to Suzune and Ayano Koji, the cameras can prove that the Class C students started the fight. The boys become visibly nervous. Obviously, the Class C guys wonder why in the hell the student council hasn't already used this evidence. However, Ayano Koji tells them that the council's probably watching how students handle the situation. So yeah, this might actually be a test. At this point, the 3 Class C guys are so terrified that Daiichi, the leader among the 3, agrees to withdraw the accusation. Elsewhere, Sakura is walking through the school store when she realizes that someone is following her. At the same time, Ayano Koji meets with Honami to thank her for her help with the investigation around Ken. At that very moment, Ayano Koji receives a phone call from Sakura, who sounds terrified. However, before Sakura can explain what's happening, the call is abruptly cut off. Oh man! It turns out Sakura's phone had been knocked away and she's being pinned against a wall by Yukitsu. Yeah, the electronics store clerk who repaired her camera earlier. He's revealed to be the obsessive stalker who's been sending her letters. This jerkwad is hurt that Sakura has been ignoring him. Yukitsu even threatens to post Sakura's private photos online if she doesn't obey him. Yeah, this sicko must have stolen some photos when he was repairing Sakura's camera. Right then, Yukitsu forces himself on Sakura. My god. Fortunately though, Ayano Koji arrives on the scene after tracking Sakura's phone and captures a picture of Yukitsu doing this god-awful act.
Local electronics store employee caught in the act of assault. You're gonna be famous. No, infamous is more accurate.
At that point, Yukitsu also notices the security cameras all around and runs away. However, Honami arrives with security guards, stops the asshole, and has him arrested. After this whole experience, Ayano Koji asks Sakura to stop living in hiding, and, well, Sakura agrees. Next, we cut to Sae, who summons Suzune to reveal something about Ayano Koji. At the same time, Ken meets Ayano Koji and tells him that Class C students suddenly withdrew the complaint. Nobody knows why, but Ayano Koji says that Suzune must have done something. Dude always gives credit to Suzune. Back with Sae, the teacher explains to Suzune that Ayano Koji is actually sort of a genius. The guy possesses godly insight and is cunning, yet he's somehow ended up in Class D. So, there's some great mystery surrounding Ayano Koji. Elsewhere, Ayano Koji encounters Manabu. The council president tells Ayano Koji that he has accepted the withdrawal of the complaint. Ken is safe. Then, Manabu surprises Ayano Koji by offering him a secretary position at the student's school. But of course, he refuses, saying he prefers a normal student life. Meanwhile, Ryuen, the leader of Class C, is pissed that Ken didn't get expelled. He's also pissed at his 3 classmates for withdrawing the complaint against Ken. So, Ryuen orders Albert Yamada, a massive Class C student, to beat up the 3 pricks. Elsewhere, Suzune asks Ayanokoji whether he manipulated everything that happened. Suzune points out that Ayanokoji already knew there were no security cameras in the area, so it was all a bluff. Yeah, dude is a mastermind, alright. Regardless, Suzune is sure that Ayanokoji is a genius, and she wants him to help her reach Class A. Now, all these questions trigger a brief flashback inside Ayanokoji's mind. He's in a mysterious environment where someone collapses in pain while he simply watches. Returning to the present, Ayanokoji agrees to help Suzune reach Class A, as long as she doesn't ask him about his past.
I will help you get to Class A, like I promised. But
But what?
don't go prying into my life.
The next episode kicks off during summer vacation, with Suzune spending her time exactly how you would expect. Studying, alone, in her room. Blech. Meanwhile, Ayanokoji repeatedly calls Suzune to convince her to join the rest of the class for a trip to the pool. Since Ayanokoji doesn't give up easily, Suzune is left with no choice but to say yes. On the day of the trip, Ken, Haruki, and 2 other Class D students named Kanji and Hideo come up with this plan to peek into the girls' changing room. Wouldn't be a high school anime without one of these very uncomfy scenes. So, to execute the plan, Kanji is then sent inside the girls' changing room to install the cameras. Again, disgusting. However, while Kanji is inside, Ryuen from Class C suddenly starts approaching the changing room with his goons. So, Ken steps forward and confronts Ryuen to buy some time for Kanji to get out. Unfortunately, the situation gets even more chaotic when students from Class A also arrive on the scene. However, before things escalate into a fight, Manabu arrives and shuts everything down. While all this is happening, Hideo secretly informs Ayanokoji about this whole mess. Ayanokoji then asks Suzune to climb onto a diving platform and give a motivating speech to Class D. Well, Suzune doesn't know she's covering for some pervs, so she gives the damn speech. While everyone is distracted by Suzune's speech, Kanji safely escapes the changing room. However, Suzune discovers what the boys were actually trying to do.
What a bunch of perverts. There really were cameras set up in the dressing room, like you said.
So, she heads into the changing room and removes the SD cards from all the hidden cameras. Yeah, suck it, perverts. After that, Suzune confronts Ayanokoji about the whole thing, and Ayanokoji says he knew what the boys were up to. However, he still tried to control the situation as best as he could. Once the conversation is over, Ayanokoji pushes Suzune into the pool, and the rest of her classmates start splashing water at the poor. After the trip is over, Suzune looks at a picture of herself in the pool, and it seems like she actually had a good time. The 8th episode kicks off with all of our first-year students being taken on a luxurious cruise ship. Jeez, that's one expensive class trip. On the cruise, Sai calls in Ayanokoji and reveals to the boy that an unknown man has contacted the school and requested that Ayanokoji be expelled. No way! Of course, for this insane school, that's enough reason to expel the kid. Still, Sai promises to protect Ayanokoji in situations like these, but only if Ayanokoji uses his full potential and tries to reach Class A. As expected, Ayanokoji says nah and tries to walk away. However, Sai warns Ayanokoji that if he doesn't cooperate, he could lose both the school and his freedom. Of course, this pisses him off, and he thinks Sai is trying to manipulate him. Still, Ayanokoji doesn't do anything rash and starts thinking about what the hell he should do. Moving on from that, Ayanokoji talks to Suzune, who reveals that they're currently heading to a boarding facility on a private island, which is also owned by the school. So yeah, there's much more to this cruise than the students know. Right then, Ryuen approaches Suzune to question her about the recent security camera incident. However, during the conversation, Ibuki, a Class C student, confronts Ryuen about how he deals with things. Yeah, he seems like the kind of guy to have a lot of enemies. However, before Ibuki can beat some sense into Ryuen, Albert steps in and stops her. Seeing all this, Suzune realizes that Class C is on the verge of internal collapse. Oh, and during all this, Sakura has been practicing how to ask Ayano Koji out on a date. Aww. However, when Ayano Koji actually appears, Sakura loses her nerve, and instead of asking the guy out, he asks Ayano Koji if he can help her socialize with other people. Really? The following day, the mystery behind the cruise ship is finally revealed. Apparently, this isn't a vacation. Instead, this trip is the beginning of a major special exam. Way to ruin everybody's mood. Apparently, every first-year class will be dropped into a deserted island and forced to survive there for an entire week.
Now, the test of survival begins!
Looks like vacation's over.
Seriously, what is this school preparing them for? The frickin' Hunger Games? After arriving on the deserted island, Class D realizes that while surviving in this hell, they also need to earn as many bonus points as possible. Also, each class gets 300 S points they can use on the island to buy stuff like a toilet, a barbecue, and other survival gear. But the number of points each class saves will carry over to the next month. So, everyone wants to save these points and hopefully earn some bonus points instead of spending what they already have. Oh, also, the students can't use these bonus points until after the exam ends, so they'll have to survive using only the 300 points they have. The class then heads into the forest to scout the island. However, Ken, Kanji, and Haruki, whom we're gonna call the Three Stooges, split off from the main group. Now, 9 students volunteer to search for a suitable campsite, and to do so, they split into 3 groups. Sakura and Ayano Koji are in one group, along with Rokusuke Konji, the narcissistic musclehead from Class D. However, Konji quickly separates from the group while showing off his incredible speed and acrobatic skills. Yeah, he's an idiot too.
As long as the sun is still shining, there's very little chance of getting lost while wandering around a forest like this one. It's intriguing.
Anyway, one way to earn bonus points is by finding special landmarks on the island. And it seems like Sakura and Ayano Koji are in luck, because they come across one such landmark, which is actually a cave. However, the rules aren't that simple. Apparently, only the class leader can claim a spot, and each claim can only last for 8 hours. And Class D has yet to decide on its class leader. On top of that, classes can earn 50 points if they correctly identify another class's leader at the end of the week. At the same time, they can lose 50 points if they identify the wrong student as the leader. And so, on top of being a survival game, it's also all about social deduction. Seriously, whose idea was this crazy school? Now, as Ayano Koji and Sakura approach the cave, they suddenly spot Katsuragi and Yahiko Totsuka from Class A exiting the cave. Of course, Ayano Koji doesn't want to be seen, so he quickly pulls Sakura into hiding. Now, after Katsuragi and Yahiko leave, Ayano Koji and Sakura examine the cave and then report their findings to Suzune. Meanwhile, Ken, Kanji, and Haruki return and reveal that they've discovered a clear river, which would be the perfect campsite. Then, the class discusses how to officially claim the area. Eventually, they appoint Suzune as the class leader and give her the leader card. Now, Suzune will personally claim the campsite every 8 hours. While setting up the campsite, Ayano Koji, Haruki, and Sakura come across Class C's Ibuki, who appears to be injured. and they're pretty far from the nurse's office. So of course, the trio invites Ibuki back to the campsite to treat her injuries. Class D is over the moon that they've established a campsite, but then Konji returns to the cruise ship because he isn't feeling well, and since leaving the island counts as dropping out of the exam, Class D will lose 30 S points. That is so unfair. We also learn that Konji isn't sick. He's just an asshole who created a lot of trouble for his class. Moron. The 10th episode kicks off with a flashback of Io Koji, who's a kid at this point, sitting in some sort of classroom. Then, a mysterious man, possibly his teacher, asks Io Koji to use his power to his advantage. They're really dragging out this guy's mysterious past. Now, we are back to the present, where Class D is finally settling down on the island. Then, Io Koji and Suzune decide to see how the other classes are doing. The first stop is Honami's Class B, which has established its base near a beautiful waterfall. Class A, on the other hand, has set up its base inside the cave.
Look, I only want to see what's inside. I can't imagine that being against the rules.
Well, go ahead and have a look inside then. But be prepared for the consequences.
And finally, Io Koji and Suzune visit Class C, which has established its base directly on the beach. Under Ryuen's leadership, the students are treating the entire exam as a vacation rather than managing their resources. Shockingly, since the rules penalize students only for ending up with negative points, not for spending everything early, Ryuen intentionally spent all of Class C's available exam points right away. Basically, Class C decides to enjoy the ride instead of worrying about what's next. Yeah, I don't exactly hate this strategy. However, we also learn that Ryuen punished Ibuki for running her mouth against him, and that's how she got injured. Moving on the third night, someone sneaks into the girls' tent of Class D and begins searching through Ibuki's bags. For some reason, this intruder is looking for Ibuki's phone. The next day, Class D starts trying to uncover the identities of the other class's leaders. Now, during their investigation, Io Koji and Sakura learn that every single student from Class C has apparently withdrawn from the exam. Except for Ibuki, of course. Huh? Why? What happened? We're not gonna get any answers about that now, so moving on. On the 5th day, Kei, one of the Class D's popular girls and Hirata's girlfriend, discovers that her underwear has gone missing. What the hell? The accusation immediately creates tension within the camp. To find the culprit, Class D decides to conduct a bag inspection. During the search, Hirata finds the missing underwear inside Kanji's bag. Dude, stop being a goddamn pervert. However, before the situation can spiral any further, Io Koji quietly takes possession of the underwear himself. Afterward, the class performs a search of the boys' possessions. Uh-oh. Hirata personally searches Io Koji and reports that Io Koji doesn't have the missing underwear.
It's over.
Io Koji doesn't have them either.
Eh? Turns out, Hirata deliberately chooses to hide the truth. Not only that, but he decides to take responsibility for the underwear himself, because, as Kei's boyfriend, he would get the least heat from the girls. That's actually really wise, but wouldn't it be wiser if the pervs in this class just stopped dragging everyone else down? The 11th episode kicks off with the girls deciding to set up a different camp after the whole underwear incident. However, the girls want one boy to keep an eye on the other boys while Haruki helps them set up a different base. And Suzune nominates Io Koji, saying that he actually doesn't seem like a, pervert. Later that night, Io Koji notices that Suzune has been sick ever since she stepped on the island. Suzune admits that she was sick even during the cruise, which is why she spent most of her time in her room. A little while later, Suzune realizes that someone stole her leader's card while she was washing her hair in a nearby waterfall. Aw, man. Instantly, Suzune secretly tells Ayano about the theft. Things get even worse when someone starts a fire inside the camp, which, unfortunately, destroys the survival test manual. Now, the Class D students start pointing fingers at each other. And something tells me that that is exactly what they want. During all this chaos, Ibuki quietly slips away from the camp. And don't tell me it was Ibuki who did all of that. Now, Suzune and several classmates begin searching for Ibuki, believing she's a backstabber. Turns out, Suzune is right, because during the search, Suzune realizes that Ibuki stole her leader card. Naturally, Ibuki starts attacking Suzune despite the fact that fighting isn't allowed. Unfortunately, Suzune loses the fight. She's just too weak because of the sickness. Once that's done, Ibuki takes the stolen leader card to give it to somebody else. So, yeah, someone else asked Ibuki to do all of this.
Oh, the item that you requested? I got it for you.
So we shouldn't trust students from other classes. Well, I could have told you that. The 12th episode kicks off with Ibuki contacting Class A's Katsuragi through a ham radio. Ibuki informs Katsuragi that she successfully stole Suzune's leader card. At this point, it's clear that Class A and Class C have been secretly working together throughout the island exam. Cheeky bastards. Meanwhile, Aya Nakoji finds an unconscious Suzune and carries her to a nearby cave. After Suzune wakes up, she tells Aya Nakoji everything. However, Aya Nakoji is more worried about Suzune's health because the next moment, Suzune collapses again. Now, Aya Nakoji carries Suzune all the way to the teacher's camp, forcing her to withdraw from the exam. Oh no. On the final day of the survival test, the remaining students prepare for the exam's conclusion. Now, each class must submit guesses regarding the other class's leaders. Class B's Honami chooses not to make any guesses at all. That's because she doesn't want to lose points by guessing wrong names. Playing it safe, smart. Before the submissions are finalized, Class D's Hirata receives a list from Aya Nakoji that contains the names of all the class leaders. Since Hirata trusts Aya Nakoji, he submits the names. Moving on to the final assembly, Class C's Ryuen reveals his deal with Class A. Apparently, Class C was supposed to transfer 200 points worth of supplies to Class A. In exchange, Class C would receive the leader card from another class. They withdrew most of their students from the exam to make themselves look weak, but 3 students stayed behind: Ryuen himself, Ibuki, and Satoru Kaneda, a Class C student assigned to spy on Class B. Now, Class C feels confident in their guesses, and identify Yahiko as Class A's leader, Chihiro as Class B's leader, and Suzune as Class D's leader. Dude, Ryuen is actually a mastermind. Who could have imagined? Later, the exam results are announced. But guess what? To everyone's shock, Class D wins the exam with 225 points.
First place, Class D with 225 points.
First place!
Wait, how? Class B finishes second with 140, Class A ends up with 120, and despite all of Ryuen's scheming, Class C finishes with 0 points. Okay, I take back my mastermind comment. Now, the students return to the cruise ship, and Suzune tracks down Aya Nakoji to find out how exactly Class D won. Right then, Aya Nakoji reveals that he intentionally allowed Ibuki to steal the leader card. Not only that, but he was the one who started the campfire to let Ibuki escape. What? More importantly, Iono Koji deliberately had Suzune withdraw from the exam after the theft. Why? Well, once Suzune withdrew, Iono Koji secretly became Class D's leader. Meanwhile, both Class A and Class C continued believing Suzune was still the leader, so they submitted incorrect guesses. Frickin' mind-blowing! At the same time, Iono Koji realized that Class A's Katsuragi was acting as a decoy, and the real leader of Class A was Yahiko. At the same time, it was pretty clear that Ryuen was Class C's leader. However, when it came to Class B, Iono Koji chose not to investigate because they had always been friends with Class D. Sure, it was Iono Koji who did all this, but yet again he gives all the credit to Suzune. Class D does not deserve this guy. Later, Kushida approaches Iono Koji and reveals that she hates Suzune because Suzune doesn't have a hidden side to her personality. Wait, that's it? That's your reason? That Suzune is honest, unlike you? Moving on from that nonsense, Iono Koji meets Sae in the cruise ship's theater. Iono Koji wants to know who wants him expelled from the school. Right then, Sae reveals that she knows about Iono Koji's past. Not only that, but the mysterious person who called the school was none other than Iono Koji's father. My god, but why? Sae also reveals that his father believes Iono Koji will eventually leave the school on his own. After all this, we finally learn what actually goes on inside Iono Koji's genius mind. Apparently, Iono Koji doesn't consider Suzune, Kushida, or Hirata to be his friends. They're simply useful pieces on a board. Shockingly, Iono Koji's mindset comes from the White Room, the mysterious place where Iono Koji was raised. Iono Koji believes that all human beings are nothing more than tools, and in the end, the only thing that matters is winning.
In this world, winning is everything. And in the end, I'm going to win.
Dude, who are you? The first episode of Season 2 kicks off right where the last season left off. Manabu gets the test results from the island exam, and as expected, Manabu instantly links Class D's victory to none other than Iono Koji. Cut back to the cruise ship, where the students learn that their next special exam is about to begin, and they're summoned to separate rooms for this test. More exams. Great! Following the instructions he got in an email, Iono Koji heads to room 504. There, Iono Koji finds Yukimura, one of Class D's gifted students, and Hideo already waiting. A little while later, Kei also arrives and joins them. Once everyone is gathered, the group learns the details of the new special exam. Apparently, all first-year students have been divided into 8 mixed groups named after the planets of the solar system. Each group contains students from all 4 classes, and Iono Koji's group is assigned to Team Mars. There will be 4 students from Class D, 4 from Class C, and 3 each from Classes A and B. And since they're all in the same group, everyone will have to work together. You still with me? The students then learn about the concept of a VIP. Interestingly, in every planet group, one student has been secretly designated as the VIP, and the objective of the exam is to identify that person. Now, throughout the week, students from within that group will participate in multiple meetings and discussions, and once that's done, each group will have to submit its guesses. Sounds simple enough. But hold on, there's more to these irritating rules. If you've ever heard of something called the prisoner's dilemma, this is just like that. Now, there are 4 different outcomes to this exam. Outcome 1. If the entire group discovers the VIP's identity and everyone submits the correct answer together, then every participant receives 500,000 points, while the VIP receives 1 million points. That's a heck of a lot of money. However, this outcome requires complete trust. Outcome 2 is when one or more members from a group incorrectly identify the VIP, or if students fail to submit an answer. In that case, only the VIP receives 500,000 private points. Outcome 3 is when a student correctly identifies the VIP and secretly submits the answer before the deadline without consulting the group. That student gains 500,000 private points and 50 class points for their class only. However, the VIP's class loses 50 points. So, yeah, any student could go with Outcome 3 to reward their class and punish the VIPs. Finally, there is Outcome 4, when a student submits an early answer but gets it wrong. In that case, their class loses 50 class points, while the VIP still receives 500,000 private points. Ugh, my brain just frickin' exploded! Moving on from that burst of information, Team Mars holds its first official meeting. Class B's Honami immediately takes charge of the discussion. Honami believes that everyone should work together to identify the VIP and go for Outcome 1. Yeah, go with that.
Fortunately, Class A has decided not to participate in any discussions.
Unfortunately for Honami, though, students from Class A strongly disagree. They point out that Honami's plan only works if every single person can be trusted. However, even if one student decides to betray the group and submit the answer early, the entire strategy falls flat on its face. So, Class A in Team Mars thinks that revealing the VIP's identity is too damn risky. Now, just because Class A didn't cooperate, the first discussion meeting of Team Mars amounts to a whole lot of nothing. The next episode kicks off with Konji busy working out as usual, while Class D's Hirata is speaking with Yukimura and Ayonokoji. Hirata confirms that Kushida privately told him that she is one of Class D's VIPs in the special exam. Yukimura then points out that there are 4 classes and 8 groups, so there should be 2 VIPs from each class. And if the VIPs are distributed evenly among the classes, then Class D should still have another VIP somewhere. Right then, Konji suddenly walks over after showing off his muscles and says that all they need to do is expose the liar through a quiz-like process. Then, without consulting anyone else, he sends an email to the school, submitting a guess for his team's VIP. Well, this action from Konji forces Team Saturn's exam to conclude immediately. So yeah, it's pretty clear that Konji's answer was right.
Special exam is but a simple quiz to call out a liar.
We got a message? Let's see. The Saturn group's test has concluded.
Man, I need to be as chill as Konji. Later, Ayonokoji meets Suzune to ask her about Kei, because he knows nothing about the girl. Apparently, Kei doesn't like Ayonokoji for some reason, so Ayonokoji wants to find a way to get her to cooperate. However, before Suzune can answer, Ryuen suddenly appears and reveals he's close to uncovering the true identities of several VIPs. Come on, this exam's just getting started! Then, Ryuen suggests that classes B, C, and D should combine their information and work together to crush Class A. However, Suzune says nah, cause, Ryuen isn't exactly trustworthy. Later that day, Ayonokoji notices Hirata and Kei arguing over their relationship. Once that's over, Ayonokoji speaks with Hirata about his awful love life, and Hirata reveals that he only started dating Kei to protect her.
Or wait, maybe she's trying to protect herself.
Right on the money again. You're surprisingly perceptive, Ayonokoji.
Apparently, Kei is really insecure, cause during elementary school and junior high, she was bullied like hell. Damn, poor girl. Now, Ayonokoji heads to another Team Mars meeting. And just like before, Class A refuses to cooperate to figure out who's really the VIP. Darn it! The third episode kicks off with Kei getting bullied by Class C's Manabe and her friends. Nearby, Ayonokoji and Yukimura watch the entire thing, but Ayonokoji tells Yukimura not to interfere, because he's planning something else. Dude, come on. At one point, Manabe and her friends physically assault Kei and even record the incident on their phones. Horrible. Just horrible. Now, Yukimura has had enough, so he stops Manabe and her Class C goons and they just leave. At this point, Kei's just hurt, so instead of thanking Yukimura, Kei just walks away. Later that day, Ayonokoji anonymously contacts Manabe and encourages her to continue targeting Kei. Man, what the hell are you doing? Moving on, Manabe and her friends lure Kei to another isolated location to bully her again. These Class C goons beat poor Kei up, and once the Class C goons leave, Ayonokoji finally approaches Kei and asks why she didn't fight back. And after talking to the poor girl, Ayonokoji realizes that Ken believes resistance is pointless. Now, Ayonokoji offers to let Kei become his ally. In return, Ayonokoji promises to provide emotional support and protect her from future bullying. Ayonokoji also reveals that he's gathered evidence against Manabe and her friends. Naturally, Kei accepts Ayonokoji's proposal and agrees to work with him. Ooh, God, he's playing the poor girl. Now, we move back to another one of Team Mars's meetings. This time, Hamaguchi, a student from Class B, suggests that every member simply show their phones to the group. He thinks that if everyone reveals the email they got from the school, the VIP's identity should become obvious. That actually sounds like a good idea. Now, one by one, the other students begin showing their phones as well. Eventually, it's Yukimura's turn, and the email on his phone confirms that he is the VIP. Oh, damn! However, Hanami is a little suspicious, so he calls Ayonokoji's phone number, and guess what? The phone in Yukimura's hand begins ringing. So yeah, naturally everyone thinks that Ayonokoji and Yukimura switched phones. But really, what are you up to, Ayonokoji? Now, the entire group thinks that Ayonokoji must be the real VIP and was trying to hide his identity. And all this time, Ayonokoji remains perfectly calm. After the meeting, we learn that Ayonokoji was never the VIP. In fact, the real VIP of Team Mars is, wait for it, Kei. What?
I need you because you're the VIP, Karuizawa.
How did you know?
Hirata mentioned it to me.
According to Ayonokoji, it was Hirata who revealed this to Ayonokoji. However, to protect Kei's identity, Ayonokoji exchanged phones with Kei and even swapped SIM cards. Later, that same phone eventually ended up in Yukimura's possession. So, while Team Mars thinks they know who the VIP is, the real VIP's identity still remains hidden. That is smart, but why exactly are you doing this? Alright, basically, Ayonokoji has been setting traps for someone, however, we still don't know his end goal. Oh, also, at this point, Honami appears and reveals that she knew about Ayonokoji's plan all along. However, she didn't rat him out because she understands Ayonokoji's plan. Students from Class A and Class C will submit incorrect guesses and lose class points, but Honami can make sure nobody from Class B falls from the same trap. Ooh, smart. But despite all that, we learn that Class C has won the test and earned a lot of points after correctly guessing the VIPs, all thanks to Ryuen.
That's a nice expression, Suzune. Do you believe me now? I did tell you that I'd find out the identities of all the VIPs, didn't I?
The fourth episode kicks off with the conclusion of the VIP exam, and we learn a secret trick behind how the VIPs were chosen. Interestingly, the VIPs were determined by the names of the students in each group. For example, in the Mercury group, the first planet from the Sun, the VIP was the student whose name appeared first alphabetically. Ah. So, the exam was actually much easier than most students realized. Ryuen had already figured out this pattern, and that's how he knew the identities of all the VIPs. Back in the classroom, Sae informs Class D that the next event will be the school's annual sports festival. So you've got to be a genius and be athletic in this school? God. Moving on, the rules for the sports festival are explained. Basically, the students from different classes will be divided into two teams, red and white. Class D will be paired with Class A on the red team, while the remaining classes will form the white team. The festival will feature both team events and individual competitions, so it's gonna be a whole damn mess. As expected, students on the winning team will receive bonus points that can be applied to future written exams. However, there's also a penalty, of course. The 10 worst performing first-year students will lose 10 points on their next written exam. As Class D begins discussing strategy, Suzune says that in team events, stronger athletes should be paired with weaker students. So basically, Suzune wants to balance the teams so the class can improve its overall rankings and maximize the wins. Smart! However, Kei strongly disagrees with this strategy. Apparently, Kei believes that if they drag weaker students into events, it'll actually increase their chances of ending up in the bottom 10. Ooh, that kinda makes sense too. Now, there are two different strategies, so the class holds a vote. In the end, Kei's position receives more support from the students. Uh-oh, Suzune might be pissed. After the class meeting, we learn that it was Ayano Koji who encouraged Kei to challenge Suzune's proposal in front of the class. Course it was. Ayano Koji also reveals that someone within Class D might betray the class during the sports festival. According to him, this traitor will leak important information to the other classes. I wonder who it could be. Later, while speaking with Suzune, Ayano Koji reveals that the traitor might be Kushida.
During the last test, there was somebody who betrayed the Earth group. It was her.
I believe you, man. The reason for the suspicion is that during the VIP test, someone betrayed Team Earth, and according to Ayano Koji, it was Kushida. The 5th episode kicks off as the sports festival officially begins. Ayano Koji is still speaking with Suzune about Kushida, and this guy can't figure out Kushida's true motive. So, to get some bloody answers, he arranges a meeting between himself, Suzune, and Kushida. During the conversation, Suzune directly asks Kushida if she's the traitor. But of course, Kushida denies it all, and since neither Ayano Koji nor Suzune have any concrete proof against her, the meeting falls flat on its face. The focus then shifts to the sports festival, and things are going well for Team Red, classes A and D. That's mainly because Ken and Suzune are literally kicking the ass of everyone against them. Thanks to these two, Team Red wins several early events and builds great momentum. At the same time, Suzune's older brother Manabu also dominates every single event. So yeah, things are going real well for Team Red. However, Team Red realizes that they need more than that to actually win. They need every capable athlete. So, they try to convince Class D's Konji to take this event seriously. But as expected, Konji shows little to no interest in helping anyone besides himself. This dude. Meanwhile, Class C's Ryuen from Team White starts playing dirty by provoking Ken and making him lose focus during the event. At the same time, the prick also asks one of his classmates to injure Suzune during a competition. And sadly, the attack leaves Suzune with a serious leg injury. Jesus, Ryuen is really an asshole. With Suzune out, Team Red is in serious trouble. But moving on from that, Ryuen continues pushing Ken's buttons, and eventually Ken gets pissed enough to try and attack Ryuen. Fortunately, Hirata steps in and stops Ken from making this mistake. Yeah, dude, cool down a bit. But due to all the frustration, Ken punches Hirata instead and decides to leave the festival. Aw, come on. Meanwhile, Suzune stubbornly refuses to drop out despite her injury. But of course, she continues to lose the events no matter how hard she tries. Right then, Ayonokoji decides he's had enough and gives Suzune the scolding of a lifetime.
How long are you going to be utterly useless?
What do you mean by that?
What do you think? I'm just calling it as I see it, and you're useless.
Ayonokoji asks Suzune to stop trying to handle everything alone. Surprisingly, Suzune realizes her mistake and decides to bring Ken back to make up for it. However, while searching for Ken, Suzune runs into Kushida, who reveals that Class C's Kinoshita is in the infirmary. She's the one who injured Suzune, and now suffered a serious injury herself. I don't like this. Of course, Suzune thinks that the story sounds suspicious, so she decides to investigate anyway. Moving on, Suzune finally arrives at the infirmary, where she sees Ryuen. Dang it! It's becoming quite clear that Ryuen wants to frame Suzune for Kinoshita's injury, and without much evidence, Suzune has very little chance of getting out of this. As expected, Kushida is part of this plan, and she asks Ryuen if there's an alternative where Suzune doesn't face punishment. Ryuen says, yeah, of course there is, but it'll cost 1,000,000 points. Not only that, but Ryuen also wants Suzune to kneel and beg him not to report this incident to the student council.
Now, on top of the points, I want you to grovel.
You're truly a disgusting person.
The sadistic jerk. Of course, Suzune doesn't want to get her brother Manabu involved, so she doesn't say no. Ryuen says that she has until the end of the sports festival to think about it. Obviously, Suzune is shaken after all this, but still, she's determined to win the sports festival no matter what. The 6th episode kicks off with Suzune trying to bring Ken back to the event. Even though Ken is too pissed to play anymore, Suzune does make a significant impact on his mood. Meanwhile, back on the sports grounds, Ayonokoji practices a 3-legged race with Kushida. During all that, Ayonokoji directly asks Kushida if she's feeding information to Class C. Kushida plays innocent at first, but eventually she admits she's the backstabber. Turns out, Kushida is hell-bent on getting Suzune expelled. Not only that, but Kushida reveals that she's going after Ayonokoji as well.
Since you like her so much, I'll make sure you get expelled with Horikita. That way I won't have to look at your face again. And once the two of you are out of my life, I can work with everyone to get to Class A!
This girl's got no shame. Later that day, Ken ultimately decides to return and compete again. During the final race of the event, Ayonokoji actually puts some genuine effort to win. But he's no athlete, so the poor guy loses by the smallest possible margin. The event finally concludes, and even though Class D performs poorly in the overall rankings, Ayonokoji doesn't seem to care. For some reason, he's satisfied with the results because it aligns with his larger plans. After the sports festival ends, Suzune meets Kushida and Ryuen, and this time, Suzune finally confronts Kushida for being a traitor. Not only that, but Suzune also reveals that she remembers a girl from her middle school who was a great nuisance and looked very much like Kushida. What the hell? At this point, Kushida drops the act and reveals to Suzune that she's been working against her. Kushida admits she wants to get both Suzune and Ayonokoji expelled.
In order for me to truly become the person I want to be, I can't take any chances. I need to get rid of anyone who knows about my past.
And Ryuen also admits that he's been working against Suzune. I mean, this dude asked his classmate to fake an injury just to get Suzune expelled. However, much to Ryuen and Kushida's surprise, Suzune secretly recorded the entire conversation. Yeah, in this school, you should probably just record everything to be safe. However, Ryuen reveals that he can still save himself by pretending that everything he said was just to entertain Suzune. Basically the "I was kidding" defense.
Of course, I was only playing along.
I can always cut around that and only keep the parts where you talk about your plan, you know.
I guess you could do that. I'll just give them this.
And to make matters worse, Ryuen also recorded the entire conversation, including a part where he says that all of this is hypothetical. Jeez, this is so much scheming. However, just when Ryuen starts to think that he's won, he gets a phone call. Ryuen learns that someone within Class C has been helping Ayonokoji gather evidence against him. In other words, Class C has its own traitor. This evidence is actually a recording of Ryuen plotting against Suzune. Heh, karma, asshole. The 7th episode kicks off with Manabu, the student council president, stepping down from his position. Before leaving, Manabu passes the role to a talented student from 2A, Nagumo Miyabi, who honestly just looks like another jerk. Later that day, Sai tells Class D about the year-end special exam known as the Paper Shuffle. According to Sai, this exam is notorious because students are almost always expelled from it.
Every year, a pair or two gets expelled during this exam. It would be a shame if you broke our streak with this. Something to consider.
Uh-oh. The students learn that they'll have to work in pairs for this exam, so they instantly start thinking of a partner. However, Sai reveals that pairs won't be decided by the students themselves. Before the real paper shuffle exam, the class must first complete a practice exam. The students who perform the best in the practice exam will be paired with the students who perform the worst, as an attempt to balance the pairings. Great. That's not the only surprising part, as Sai also reveals that instead of the teachers, the students themselves will design the final exam papers for another class. Basically, each class will prepare questions for a rival class, while teachers supervise the process to ensure there's no funny business. Why is every exam in this so frickin' complicated? Later, Suzune meets Ayonokoji to tell him about Kushida's past. Suzune reveals that near the end of their middle school years, Kushida's class experienced a total disaster that completely destroyed the students' relationships.
From all the rumors that were circulating, it was caused by one person. A girl who was in that class.
Oh lordy, what happened? Unfortunately, Suzune doesn't know, but according to rumors, it was all because of Kushida. Of course. Now, Suzune thinks that Kushida wants to get her expelled before Suzune reveals Kushida's middle school fiasco to everyone. After listening to all this, Ayonokoji suggests that the safest option would be to get Kushida expelled instead. Moving on from that, Ryuen learns that Manabe is the traitor from Class C. Yeah, she's the prick who bullied Kei on the cruise ship. Apparently, Ayonokoji recorded the entire bullying incident, and without revealing his identity, he blackmailed Manabe into leaking Ryuen's strategy. Of course, Ryuen doesn't learn who the mastermind is from Class D, but he knows that Kei is somehow related to all of this. Uh-oh. Elsewhere, Suzune gathers Class D to discuss strategies for the Paper Shuffle's pairing quiz. Suzune wants to divide the class into 4 groups based on their academic ability. According to Suzune's strategy, the weakest students would intentionally submit blank answer sheets and receive scores of 0. On the other hand, the strongest students would score as highly as possible. Finally, the remaining students would be split into 2 middle groups, with one group earning modest scores and the other earning scores just below the top performers. By following this strategy, Suzune believes that the smartest students would end up paired with weaker students, thus creating a perfect balance. She then turns the discussion towards selecting a target class. After that, Suzune suggests that they specifically target Class C in Paper Shuffle. That's because going against Class A and B would be too damn risky. The 8th episode kicks off with Class D deciding to stay in groups to prepare for Paper Shuffle. Meanwhile, Suzune and Kushida decide to lead separate study sessions to help the students. After all this, Suzune meets Kushida to deal with her once and for all. Suzune tells Kushida that she's growing tired of their beef. Then, Suzune challenges Kushida to a direct competition. Apparently, during the upcoming exam, Suzune wants her and Kushida to compete in a subject of Kushida's choosing. If Kushida scores higher, Suzune will voluntarily withdraw from the school. However, if Suzune wins, Kushida must stop trying to get her expelled.
What happens if I get a higher score than you?
In that case, I'll voluntarily drop out of school.
Ooh.
That's kinda risky. And to ensure that neither side backs out, Suzune even asks her brother Manabu to serve as a witness to their agreement. The next day, even Ayano Koji gets involved in the agreement. He tells Kushida that he's also willing to leave the school if Suzune loses in the exam, but only if Kushida reveals the truth about what happened during junior high. Yeah, give us the juicy stuff. Since the offer is too tempting to reject, Kushida finally reveals what actually happened. Apparently, to get popular, Kushida started listening to all of her classmates, their problems, their secrets, all of that sort of stuff. However, after a while, she grew tired of pretending to be a cute and sweet girl. So, to let out her frustration, Kushida anonymously started writing a blog. There, Kushida basically trash-talked about her classmates. Unfortunately for her though, one of her classmates eventually discovered the blog, and now the entire class confronted Kushida, and to save her ass, she outright revealed the secrets of all of her classmates right in front of everyone. She also revealed what her classmates used to say about each other behind their backs. Oh god. Because of this, the classmates turned against each other, and Kushida basically tore up her entire class. What's worse is that Kushida actually thinks that her actions were justified.
That's the way it had to be. Since there's no way they'd go back to praising me.
Yeah, I hate this girl even more now. Not only that, but Kushida also reveals that she knows countless secrets about Class D, and if she ever feels cornered again, she's prepared to reveal everything. The 9th episode kicks off with Kushida meeting up with Ryuen. Kushida says that in exchange for helping Class C in the paper shuffle, she wants access to the upcoming exam questions. Since Ryuen is also a complete jerk, he agrees to help. She'll sell out her whole class by giving away their questions in advance, just to secure a good score for herself. During the study sessions, the students suggest that they call each other by their first names to become closer. However, Yukimura explains that he hates his first name because it was given to him by his mother, who abandoned him when he was very young. Instead, he asks everyone to call him by the name his father gave him, Keisei. Later that night, Ayano Koji meets Kei and asks her a favor. Interesting. Now, during a gathering of Class D students, Kei suddenly lashes out at Kushida for being manipulative. And during the argument, Kei throws a glass of water at Kushida. Oh, damn. But afterward, Kei apologizes for her behavior and convinces Kushida to hand over her school uniform so she can have it washed. Oh, I see what's going on here. Later that day, Kushida submits what she believes are Class D's official paper shuffle questions to Sae. Then, she secretly passes the questions to Ryuen.
Going behind everyone's backs and swapping out your class's question sheet, are you? How very cold-blooded.
In exchange, Ryuen gives her the questions that'll appear on the final exam. At least, that's what he says. Now that Kushida has everything she wants, she prepares for the test. Finally, the day of the exam arrives, and after receiving the question paper, Kushida realizes the questions are completely different from what Ryuen gave her. Of course, Kushida thinks Ryuen played her, so after the exam's end, she rushes off to confront the Class C jerk. Right then, Ryuen reveals that Suzune anticipated this betrayal before the exam. so Suzune privately met with Sae to request that only officially recognized class representatives would be allowed to submit exam questions. And well, Sae agreed because that request seemed fair. And because of that, the questions Kushida submitted were never actually accepted as the real paper shuffle exam. And since Ryuen learned he'd never get the real questions, he tricked Kushida and gave her fake questions as well. So the only real loser here is Kushida. Moving on, Kushida meets Suzune, who at this point wants to bury the hatchet and move on. However, Kushida is stubborn and evil as hell, so she rejects the peace offering. But now, Kushida wants to target Ayonokoji before going after Suzune.
As far as my promise goes, I only said that I'd stop sabotaging you.
What? Is she gonna go after him next?
Bad idea, girl. The 10th episode kicks off right after the paper shuffle exam, and the students of Class D are over the moon that nobody was expelled. Now, while hanging out, Ayonokoji's study group notices that the leaders of Class A and Class B are talking to each other like they're best buddies. However, Class D pays little attention to it. After school, Kei notices a student from Class C following her around. It's clear that Ryuen has asked someone to follow Kei to identify Class D's mastermind. So, she reports it to Ayonokoji, but the guy already has another spy to deal with. Apparently, someone else has been following Ayonokoji, and Kei has learned that the person spying on Ayonokoji is from Class A. Great. How many of the students here go on to be spies after they graduate? Frickin' all of them? The following day, Sae takes Ayonokoji to the school's reception rooms, where Ayonokoji sees Professor Atsuomi Ayonokoji, who's also, you may have already guessed it, his father. Atsuomi then informs Ayonokoji that Matsuo set himself on fire. And who the hell is that? Matsuo was Ayonokoji's former butler who helped Ayonokoji escape the mysterious White Room. Not only that, but it was Matsuo who helped Ayonokoji enroll at this school. After giving such terrible news to his son, Atsuomi asks Ayonokoji to leave the school and return to him. As expected, Ayonokoji says, nah. So, Atsuomi calls in Chairman Sakayanagi, the head of the school who once worked as Atsuomi's secretary. Also, you should know that Class A's gifted student Arisu is actually Sakayanagi's daughter. Anywho, Atsuomi pressures Sakayanagi to expel Ayonokoji from the school. However, Sakayanagi also says nah, but so much more politely. Even though Sakayanagi respects Atsuomi, he simply can't bend the school's rules. Sakayanagi also explains that as long as Ayonokoji wants to stay here, nobody, not even the boy's father himself, can force him out. That's actually great. And real quick, let's now learn a little bit about the White Room. It's a secret educational institution founded by Atsuomi roughly 2 decades earlier. The White Room has one single purpose: to create perfect human beings. Students raised in the White Room get a really intense education that makes them outperform every other child. Goddamn! White Room sounds more like an experiment than a school. What's more terrifying is that children raised in the White Room are deprived of emotional development and human connections. Victory over anything else. That is the motto of the White Room. Yeah, that explains Ayonokoji's emotional insensitivity. Ayonokoji believes that the White Room shouldn't even exist. In fact, according to some former White Room students, Advanced Nurturing High School is one of the few places where they can escape their horrible past. That is why Matsuo recommended this school to Ayonokoji. Man, Matsuo was a savior. After meeting up with his father, Ayonokoji realizes one more truth. You remember how Sae claimed that she knew Ayonokoji's father personally? Well, that wasn't the case at all. In fact, Sae simply fabricated that story to push Ayanokoji to Class A. Apparently, Sae became obsessed with reaching Class A as a teacher, but clearly she couldn't because she was stuck with a bunch of Class D morons. Now, Sae wanted to achieve her goals through Ayanokoji. All this realization deeply affects Ayanokoji, and he starts losing his will to fight. So, he decides to distance himself from everyone, starting with Kei. Ayanokoji calls Kei and reveals that he's cutting all ties with her. Ayanokoji says that he'll still help her if she's in trouble, but he's no longer interested in maintaining a connection with her.
I was under the impression you didn't like being my pawn either.
Of course not, obviously.
Are you sure about that?
As if! You're delusional!
Oh my god, poor Kei. The 11th episode kicks off with Ryuen suddenly arriving in Class D. Why? He's looking for the Class D student who's gathered evidence against him. At first, Ryuen confronts Konji, who reveals that he has no damn interest in class politics, especially in Ryuen. During this entire confrontation, Class A's Arisu also arrives on the scene, and instead of stopping this nonsense right away, Arisu seems to enjoy this whole mess, which even surprises Ayanokoji. Anyway, once Ryuen realizes that he won't get anything out of Konji, he moves his attention towards Kei. Oh god, not Kei. Later, Ryuen, along with his goons, lures Kei to a secluded place to try and make her reveal the name of the mastermind, which we all know is Ayanokoji. Anywho, Ryuen beats the crap out of her and even tortures the poor girl emotionally. However, Kei doesn't budge or reveal Ayanokoji's name.
I've decided. I'll destroy Kei Karizawa.
Holy crap, Ryuen. Are the points really worth all this? The episode picks up right where the previous one left off. That jerk Ryuen isn't letting go of Kei until she reveals the name of the mastermind. Kei, on the other hand, just isn't ready to betray Ayanokoji. Meanwhile, we see that Ayanokoji is smart enough to deduce that Ryuen has been targeting Kei. So, Ayanokoji meets Sae and tells her everything that's happening with Kei. But guess what? Sae points out that teachers don't interfere in personal conflicts between students. You've gotta be kidding me! However, Ayanokoji isn't actually asking for her help. In fact, he's already got something else in mind. Now, Sae follows Ayanokoji outside and sees Manabu. Ayanokoji asks Manabu to act as a witness and remember that Class C started this conflict, not Class D. Manabu agrees, but on a condition. If Manabu becomes a witness, Ayanokoji must convince Suzune to join the student council. Of course, Ayanokoji has no problem with Suzune joining the council, so he agrees. Now, Ayanokoji, all alone, heads straight to where Ryuen and his goons are beating up Kei. First, Ayanokoji meets Albert and reveals to the big guy that he's the person Ryuen is looking for. Then, Albert takes Ayanokoji inside, where he sees a battered up Kei, and of course, there's Ryuen and his goons. Right away, Ayanokoji tells the Class C goons that he is the mastermind of Class D. Now, Ryuen asks one of his guys to beat the crap out of Ayanokoji. But hey, this Class C goon couldn't even touch the guy if he tried. Ayanokoji isn't just a genius, he's a fighting genius too. At this point, it's pretty darn clear that Ayanokoji is operating on a whole different level. Albert also joins the fight, but that doesn't change a thing. Ayanokoji just keeps dodging every attack, and very soon, he defeats Ryuen's minions without breaking a single sweat. Forget the schemes, man. Start doing MMA. Now, Ayanokoji reveals that he was actually waiting for this situation to arise. Basically, Ayanokoji knew that this would happen, and he wanted things to get violent with Ryuen. Holy sh... Regardless, with every one of his guys tasting dust on the ground, Ryuen decides to fight Ayanokoji himself. However, Ayanokoji decides he's had enough. So, he overwhelms Ryuen and continues beating him until Ryuen gets knocked out.
Why would a mundane task like this?
Dude, who the hell are you? Once all this is over, Ayanokoji talks to Kei and assures her that he'll always stand by her side. So you could say that for the first time, Ayanokoji actually cares about somebody. Aww. Sure, he was willing to let her get beaten up a little bit first, but for Ayanokoji, this is huge progress. The final episode of Season 2 shows us the aftermath of Ayanokoji's fight with Ryuen. After his beatdown, Ryuen is so damn shaken that he wants to leave the school. Oh, and yeah, the school wants to throw him out as well since he started the fight by bullying Kei. Ryuen's friend from Class C, Ibuki, tells him to stay, but the guy's made up his mind. However, Ayanokoji is aware of all this, so he intervenes from behind the scenes. Basically, Ayanokoji puts part of the blame on Class D and on the destroyed surveillance cameras. And thanks to all of this, Ryuen doesn't exactly have to leave the school. After learning all this, Ryuen meets up with Ayanokoji, and it seems like, for now, Ryuen has agreed to work with, or for, Ayanokoji. During their conversation, Ayanokoji reveals how he will work against Kushida to get her expelled. Later, Maya Sato, a Class D student, confesses her feelings to Ayanokoji, but as expected, Ayanokoji rejects the offer, saying he has no interest in romance. Don't you worry one bit, girls. Ayanokoji will come through, eventually. Moving on from that, though, Ayanokoji later gets approached by Class A's leader Arisu. It's clear that Arisu thinks of Ayanokoji as competition, and like the other students in the school, she ain't exactly a saint. But what's truly shocking is that somehow Arisu knows about Ayanokoji's past. Uh-oh. Of course, this surprises Ayanokoji a little, but he doesn't really scare easily. In short, Ayanokoji has already shown he can destroy Class C, so Arisu challenges him to face the boss, Class A. The first episode of Season 3 kicks off with Sae confirming that after Ryuen's beating in the paper shuffle exam, Class D has now been promoted to Class C. At the same time, Ryuen's Class C has been demoted to Class D. So, and I know that this is gonna be confusing, when I say Class C, I'm talking about Ayanokoji's class, and when I say Class D, I mean Ryuen's class. Good luck, cause Now, we see the students heading for their next special exam, the mixed training camp. Like always, the school takes everyone to a remote location, because they like the horror vibe, I guess. Anyway, during the trip, Sae explains the rules to Class C. Basically, students will be divided into groups made up of people that they don't normally interact with. Great bonding exercise. Later, the school reveals the 4 tests that will determine each group's performance. The first is Zen, which focuses on posture and manners inside of a dojo. The second is a written exam that will be centered on morality. Then, we have the speech test, in which students will be graded on their posture, delivery, and content of the speech. Then, the final test is a marathon, which is obviously a physical test. The school also confirms that groups that perform well will earn both class points and private points. However, there's a catch, a major one. The leaders of the lowest performing groups will be expelled. What the hell? On top of that, any expelled leader will have to choose another student from their group to leave the school as well. This is a straight-up elimination round. After hearing the rules, Hirata takes responsibility for helping the boys while asking Suzune to look after the girls. Interestingly, Suzune volunteers to become a sub-leader rather than take the main leadership role. Suzune also asks Kushida to become a sub-leader with her for this task. Why? Meanwhile, Ayanokoji realizes that this exam is dangerous as hell, so he's gotta start scheming now. Once the students arrive at the training facility, Miyabi Nagumo, the new student council president, openly challenges the former president, Manabu.
And just what did you have in mind for this competition?
Jesus, things are heating up. Later that day, Suzune seeks out Kushida and asks her to work together, and since they have no other option, Kushida agrees. Around the same time, Arisu speaks with Ayanokoji. Of course, there's a rivalry between these two, but more importantly, Arisu wants to defeat Class B. So basically, Arisu tells Ayanokoji that she won't move against him for now. Later that evening, Manabu meets Ayanokoji to ask for a favor. Interestingly, Manabu wants Ayanokoji's help in defeating Nagumo. And of course, since Ayanokoji is such a helpful dude, he agrees to help. Manabu also reveals that Ikuto Kiriyama, the vice president of the student council, is already helping him. According to Kiriyama, Nagumo has gone way over his head with all the power of being president, and he may cause several student expulsions. Yeah, that's not good. In the next episode, several days before the mixed training camp, the students go into the mountains for endurance training. While there, Konji confronts Ayanokoji and says that he knows Ayanokoji defeated Ryuen. Once in a while, Konji somehow surprises ya. Ayanokoji is also shocked that without any evidence, Konji figured out far more about Ayanokoji than most students. That evening, Ayanokoji runs into a girl in President Nagumo's class named Nazuna Asahina. While talking to her, Ayanokoji learns that Nazuna isn't really fond of Nagumo and would actually like to see him lose. Oh, don't you worry, Ayanokoji's taken care of that. To seize this opportunity, Ayanokoji gathers a great deal of information about Nagumo from Nazuna. Moving on, as the mixed training camp exam approaches, Yukimura suggests that the students with stronger athletic abilities should take on more physically demanding tasks during the marathon. That's actually fair. Once the exams begin, Yukimura's strategy works really well, as Ayanokoji's group performs exceptionally well. In fact, none of the boys in their group has fallen below the expulsion line. Whew! Meanwhile, Manabu's group greatly outperforms Nagumo's group. However, Nagumo points out that this is just one competition, and they should wait because not all the results have been announced. The focus then moves to the girls' division, where we learn that a group led by Ikari, a third-year student from Class B, has finished below the cutoff line. Uh-oh. According to the exam rules, Ikari will be expelled, and she must also choose another student to join her as well. In that very moment, Manabu realizes that Nagumo's challenge was nothing but a distraction. His objective is something else. Wait, what do you mean by that? Right then, Ikari chooses the girl to be expelled with her. It's Akane Tachibana, Manabu's close ally and former student council secretary. Oh, Manabu now finally understands that Nagumo wants to hurt him in the worst way possible to achieve his goals. Fortunately though, Akane and Ikari's classes spend their private points to protect the two girls so they don't get expelled yet. Oh, thank God. Still, because of all the drama, Manabu finally knows that Nagumo is a ruthless jerk. The third episode kicks off sometime after the mixed training camp exam's conclusion. We see Arisu meeting up with Nagumo. Shockingly, Arisu wants to target Class B's Honami directly. In fact, Arisu wants to get Honami expelled, and as expected, the petty Nagumo is in on the plan. Later, we learn that Kei has officially broken up with Hirata, and while the entire class is talking about that, Arisu arrives in Class C and asks for Yamauchi. Yeah, that's the class clown who hasn't really done anything up until this point in the story. Anywho, Arisu wants to talk to Yamauchi, and the guy can't really say no to a girl who seems interested in him. Later that day, Mi-chan Wong, a student from Class D, approaches Ayanokoji. Wong asks Ayanokoji about Hirata's current relationship status, because she's interested in him. However, Ayanokoji suggests not going for it, because Hirata just went through a breakup. Slow yo damn roll, girl. Moving on from that, Ayanokoji meets with Suzune and talks about how some rumors are spreading about Honami. What rumors? Of course, Ayanokoji knows very well that it's someone from Class A who's spreading these rumors. However, for now, Ayanokoji decides not to intervene. Dude is clearly planning something. Regardless, Suzune later invites both Ayanokoji and Honami to her apartment. During the meeting, Suzune directly discusses the rumors. Surprisingly though, Honami is way too calm and doesn't want Class C to get involved in this war against Arisu. Seriously though, what are those rumors exactly? The next day, every student in the school receives an anonymous message claiming that Honami is a criminal.
Honami Ichinose is a verifiable criminal.
Oh my god, no! So that's the rumor, and of course it's enough to get Honami thrown out of the school. But despite all this, Honami still remains calm, as if she knows how to handle this mess. Later that day, Masumi Kamuro, a Class A student and one of Arisu's followers, speaks with Ayanokoji. Kamuro reveals that Arisu has been using her ever since she learned a secret from her past. Apparently, Kamuro has a habit of shoplifting, and Arisu has been exploiting that to make Kamuro her pawn. That's horrible. Kamuro then says that Arisu is doing something similar to Honami. Basically, Arisu knows a secret about Honami's past and is using it to blackmail her. Oh, so the criminal thing isn't completely untrue? Ultimately, Ayanokoji decides to investigate what exactly happened in Honami's past and why Arisu is using it against her. The fourth episode kicks off with Ayanokoji heading out to meet Kei. However, he notices that Masayoshi Hashimoto from Class A has been secretly following him. Jeez, not a single normal day for our boy. Apparently, Hashimoto believes that Ayanokoji was responsible for Ryuen's downfall, so he's trying to learn as much as he can about the boy. Anywho, Ayanokoji now speaks with Kei and reveals that someone mysterious has been contacting him. So, Ayanokoji wants Kei's help to identify the owner of the mysterious guy's number. Ooh. And of course, like a good friend, Kei promises to help Ayanokoji. Oh, also, this is Valentine's Day, so after talking business, Kei gives Ayanokoji a box of chocolates. Aww, is Ayanokoji finally opening himself up to love? Right then, Hashimoto steps forward and asks if Ayanokoji and Kei are in a relationship. However, Kei gives a rather vague answer to keep Hashimoto off her and Ayanokoji's backs. The next day, all the students receive anonymous messages on their phones. These messages all contain rumors and accusations about different students. In fact, one of the rumors is about Class C's Satsuki, a friendly girl claiming that she worked as a prostitute during middle school. Jesus. Seriously, why can't we just leave everyone's tragic past alone? Of course, most of the Class C students are disturbed by this rumor. But Yamauchi, well, this idiot just keeps on asking Satsuki some very insensitive questions. Dude, quit being a jerk. Of course, other students try to stop Yamauchi, which causes an argument. At this point, Suzune realizes that these rumors are causing arguments throughout the class. The fifth episode kicks off with the entire school turning against one another because of these rumors. God damn! Arisu confronts Honami right in front of Honami's entire class. Arisu wants Honami to come clean about her past and not fool her classmates any longer. And well, Honami does exactly that and confesses everything. 4 years ago, she was living happily with her sister and mother. Honami's mother didn't earn much, but she did the best she could. One day, Honami found out that her mother was overexerting herself by taking on multiple shifts at work. Apparently, Honami's mother was working so hard because her little sister, for the first time in her life, asked for a gift, a hair clip. Of course, Honami did her best to find part-time jobs, but she couldn't. Then, in a moment of weakness, Honami shoplifted the hair clip from the store. However, Honami's mother realized it, and she not only slapped Honami, but also forced her to return the hair clip. Fortunately, the store manager was a good guy and didn't report it to the police, but still, that incident left a scar on Honami. Back to the present, Arisu thinks Class B will turn on Honami after hearing this, but Class B says, nah, suck it, Arisu, as they're still going to support Honami, because that wasn't a crime, it was a mistake. That's more like it, guys. At the same time, the student council president Nagumo arrives on the scene with a teacher. Apparently, the rumors are getting out of control, so the school is finally putting a stop to it. This means if Arisu continues to spread the rumors, it won't end well for her. Finally! Later, we see Arisu speaking to Ayano Koji, and it turns out that Ayano Koji was the one who spread all the nasty rumors. What? What's more is that Ayano Koji did all that with Kushida's help. But why? It's simple. After Arisu started spreading rumors about Honami, Ayano Koji began spreading more to catch the school's attention. And because of that, the school is left with no choice but to step in and take action against the rumors. That's not it though. By letting Kushida in on this plan, Ayano Koji knows exactly what she knows about her classmates. So now, Ayano Koji finally understands what kind of threat Kushida possesses. Frickin' brilliant. Just brilliant. The 6th episode kicks off with Sai announcing to Class C that everyone in their class, as well as every other student in the school, has passed the final exam. That's amazing and all, but then Sai says that since nobody got expelled this year, the school wants every class to take a special exam. And what is this special exam? Well, it's a class vote. Apparently, all the students will have to vote for the top 3 students and the bottom 3 students, only from within their own class. Now, the top 3 in each class will receive some private points, while the bottom 3 will lose some, and once that's done, the student at the top will be given a protection point as a reward. A protection point can be used by the student to avoid being expelled. On the other hand, the student at the bottom will definitely be expelled, and there's no way the other students can save the student with the lower score. Oh, wait, hold on. This just in. The students can prevent somebody from getting expelled, but they'll have to pay 20 million points for it. Nobody has that kind of cash, Jesus! Basically, someone is getting thrown out today, and students can't do crap about it. Later, we see Class A's Arisu meeting up with Ayano Koji, and she reveals that Chairman Sakayanagi was fired recently for no good reason. Not only that, but the school came up with this idea for the special exam at the last minute. Ayano Koji thinks that someone from behind is pulling the strings, and it's all to expel one particular student. Yup, both Arisu and Ayano Koji think that the student could very well be Ayano Koji himself. Ah, jeez. Elsewhere, we see Class B's Honami meeting up with Nagumo, and it seems like Honami wants some private points from this jerk. Shockingly, Nagumo agrees to give Honami the points, but only if she goes out with him. That's not even an evil scheme. That's just really gross. The 7th episode kicks off with Ayano Koji running into Class A's Nazuna. Yeah, the same girl who kinda hates Nagumo. Anywho, Nazuna tells Ayano Koji that Honami is meeting up with Nagumo to collect some points. Basically, Honami is collecting 20 million points so she can save her classmate from expulsion, whoever it might end up being. So, she approached Nagumo to make up the difference. Oh god, Honami, what are you doing? Later, Ayano Koji learns from Kei that the entire class is planning to vote against him and get him expelled. Oh no. Of course, Ayano Koji knows there's a mastermind behind this, so he meets up with Kushida. Not surprisingly, Kushida confirms that she's working with the mastermind, who's actually Yamauchi. Wait, that insensitive clown? Why? Ayano Koji immediately says to Kushida that he believes the real mastermind controlling Yamauchi is Arisu, which surprises Kushida. Right after Kushida leaves, Ayano Koji calls someone and asks for help with this mess. Elsewhere, we see Suzune meeting up with her brother Manabu. who surprisingly guides her through who she should vote for. We don't see what Manabu says, but it's clear he agreed to help Suzune because Ayonokoji asked him to. Basically, last night, Ayonokoji called none other than Manabu to turn Suzune in favor of him and against Yamauchi. Well, the plan works like magic, because the next day, Suzune tries to convince Class C that they should expel Yamauchi. Why? Because he's only a burden to the entire class. So, according to Suzune, it's safer to throw Yamauchi out than to let any capable student be thrown out.
It's you.
Frickin' amazing! The 8th episode kicks off with Suzune revealing to the entire class that Yamauchi has been gathering negative votes against Ayonokoji. But that's not against the rules, so while the students are shocked, they're still not angry enough at this jerk. Then, Suzune also reveals that Yamauchi has been working with Arisu. And well, that pisses the entire Class C right off. Of course, Yamauchi is pissed too, and he also reveals that Kushida was helping him in all of this. However, Kushida starts crying and says she was only trying to help a friend. Even though it hurts Kushida's reputation a little bit, she's willing to play the sweet, innocent victim card. Man, I hate this girl. During all this though, Hirata gets pissed at Suzune for targeting a single student for elimination. Sure, Hirata knows that Yamauchi is a jerk, but given the nature of the exam, Hirata wanted the votes to be natural and random. Anywho, cat's out of the bag, and there's nothing Yamauchi can do to save himself. So as expected, on exam day, the entire class votes Yamauchi out. Oh, also, the top 3 Class C students in the special exam are Kushida in 3rd place, Hirata in 2nd place, and in 1st, we have, wait for it, Ayonokoji.
What's
going on here? Wait, but that's impossible!
How in the hell did that dude manage to pull it off? Well, I guess we shouldn't be too surprised. This also means that Ayonokoji has secured a protection point. Elsewhere, we see that from Class A, Yahiko Totsuka is placed at the bottom, so he's out. Meanwhile, from Class D, Ryuen was not expelled, even though he was almost sure that the class was going to vote him out. Apparently, it was Ayonokoji who saved Ryuen from getting expelled. I should have guessed. Ayonokoji arranged a meeting between Ryuen's friends from Class D and Honami from Class B. Now, remember how Honami wanted some more points to reach 20 million? Well, Ryuen's friends gave her those points, and in exchange, Honami made sure to collect enough positive votes for Ryuen. With her 20 million points, Honami can make sure everyone in Class D stays in school for now. The 9th episode kicks off with Arisu meeting up with Ayonokoji to talk about how someone wants him to get expelled from school. Yeah, we all know it's Ayonokoji's father. Right then, the school's new acting chairman arrives on scene, Tsukishiro. Quite instantly, Tsukishiro makes it clear that he's working for Ayonokoji's father. So, you could say that Tsukishiro will do anything to get Ayonokoji expelled from the school. This dude is so dang scary that he even attacks both Arisu and Ayonokoji. He's pissed at Arisu for failing to get Ayonokoji expelled. Could this school, please just have one normal adult? Moving on from that, Sae announces yet another special exam in which classes will compete against each other. For this special test, each class must select 10 events to include in the exam. These events can be pretty much anything, from a math test to a wrestling match. 5 of the events they choose will be real events the class wants to compete in, and the other 5 are fake-out events that they can trick the enemy into preparing for, but won't actually happen. Jesus, that sounds exhausting. That's not it, though. Of the 10 real events that the classes choose, only 7 of those events, chosen at random, will actually be a part of the exam. Then, there's the final catch, which is that each class must appoint a captain who can't participate in any of the events. However, they can help everyone prepare and add a special rule to each event. Now, if their class wins, the captain will secure points for their class, but if they lose, they'll be expelled. Oh god, they're gonna appoint Iono Koji as the captain, I'm sure of it. As expected, Iono Koji appoints himself as the captain, because he still has the protection point that he earned from the last exam, and has less risk of expulsion. Similarly, each class has appointed its protection point holders as captains. There, Honami from Class B, Arisu from Class A, and Kanada from Class D. And for this exam, Class A will compete against Class C, while Class D will go against Class B. Once all of that's decided, Iono Koji invites Kei to his room and gifts her a heart-shaped necklace. So at this point, it's out in the open that these guys are dating, although Iono Koji's facial expression doesn't really give off happy boyfriend vibes. Anyway, good for Iono Koji that he's with Kei, but Kei's ex-boyfriend Hirata is not too jazzed about this. The 10th episode kicks off with Hirata being disturbed by Yamauchi's expulsion, not because he liked the guy, but because as the class representative, he didn't want anyone to get expelled. Meanwhile, Katsuragi, yes, the bald student from Class A, is plotting against Arisu. That's because Katsuragi is pissed at Arisu for having his friend expelled during the class vote exam, and for that, he's ready to tell Iono Koji which events from Class A are their bluffs. At least, he would do that, but unfortunately Arisu didn't reveal any information about the events or the bluffs to her classmates. After all this, Iono Koji finally talks to Hirata and finds out what's up with him. Here, Hirata finally reveals his past. Apparently, during Hirata's middle school years, one of his friends was bullied non-stop. At the time, Hirata didn't have the courage to stand up for his friend. Soon after, that friend jumped off a building to end his life. Oh god. Fortunately, he survived, but the poor boy never fully recovered. After that incident, Hirata adopted a completely different approach to dealing with conflict. Rather than allowing disputes to grow, he became obsessed with maintaining peace and order. He would even resort to ass-whooping to keep people under control and prevent situations from spiraling out of hand. That's so gangster. However, Hirata feels bad for failing to unite his class, which led to one student's expulsion. After hearing all this, Iono Koji suggests that Hirata shouldn't do everything alone and shouldn't hesitate to ask for help. And well, Iono Koji's words work like a healing potion on Hirata's heart. Meanwhile, Suzune is worried about the special exam because Class A has chosen chess as one of their events. However, Iono Koji tells Suzune that if Class A challenges them to a chess match, she should immediately accept it. That's the spirit. Iono Koji thinks that Suzune is currently the strongest chess player in their class. To prepare, both Iono Koji and Suzune decide to practice chess online. The 11th episode takes us right away on a flashback to the White Room, where we see our sweet little Iono Koji. And guess who else is there on a visit? That's Arisu with her father Sakayanagi, who at the time was the secretary of Iono Koji's father. At one point, Arisu even looked at Iono Koji and realized he was a genius, so their beef goes way back apparently. Moving on, the final exam officially begins, and the first event that Class A and Class C will compete in is basketball. And since our Ken just adores basketball, Class C easily secures a victory in this round against Class A. Now, it's time for round 2, in which both classes will compete in a typing battle. Yeah, I'm sure someone in Class C must be quick with their fingers. Guess I was right, because Class C does win in the typing test. And the next round is in archery, which they also win. However, they lose to Class A in English and math. The next subject is mental math, which, sadly, Class A bags another win for. So now, the score is 3-3, and the next event will seal the deal for the special exam. And guess what the final subject is? It's chess, just as Iono Koji predicted. For this round, Suzune goes against Class A's Hashimoto. Also, this event has a special rule where the captains can jump in on the game to instruct their teammates on the next move. As expected, Suzune is about to win the chess match, but right then, Arisu steps in to turn the tables on Class C. Iono Koji, on the other hand, makes the wrong move, thus losing to Class A. No, our king couldn't lose like that. I don't believe it. Later, the prick Tsukishiro reveals that he interfered with the chess match and changed Ayonokoji's original instruction to something else.
And change them so Horikita would make the wrong move?
That is outrageous. In fact, this is so bad that even Arisu is pissed because she wanted to win on her own merit. But of course, Tsukishiro can do anything and everything to throw Ayonokoji out of the school. But of course, that isn't going to happen right now. Even though the losing captain in this exam is supposed to exit the school, Ayonokoji has the protection point. But still, for him to lose like this is pretty damning. Unless this is all part of his plan. With this guy, you can never know. The 12th episode begins with the graduation ceremony for the school's third-year students. Manabu, Suzune's older brother, delivers the graduation speech. I can only imagine how disappointed he'll be when he leaves this school and learns how normal the real world is in comparison. After the ceremony, we learn that, hey, it was good while it lasted, but Ayonokoji's class is now back to being Class D after losing in the special exam. So now, we'll address Ayonokoji's class as Class D again. They're never getting to Class A at this rate. It also means that Ryuen's group is back to being Class C. Later, we learn that Class B suffered heavy losses against Ryuen's class in the exam. Around this time, Suzune officially ends her alliance with Honami. Oh no. Suzune explains that now she wants her class to reach Class B and eventually Class A, so now they're basically rivals. Moving on from that, we now shift focus to a secret meeting between Ayonokoji, Arisu, Sae, and Tomonari Mashima, the homeroom teacher of Class B. During the meeting, Ayonokoji reveals that Tsukishiro, the acting chairman, is bad news and a pawn of his father. Ayonokoji also reveals that after completing school, he will likely be forced back to the White Room. But for now, he at least wants to enjoy his time at school without his father's meddling. And since the rest of the people in the room also hate Tsukishiro, they agreed to help Ayonokoji any way they can. But even Arisu agrees to take Ayonokoji's side because she wants to compete with Ayonokoji on fair grounds. Now, we cut to Suzune, who meets with her brother Manabu before he leaves the school for good. Manabu explains to his little sister that he always wanted Suzune to stop idolizing him and learn to stand on her own. That's why he pushed her away. But now, Manabu is proud Suzune has become much more independent and no longer seeks his approval. Aww, no, I'm getting emotional. The 13th episode kicks off with Class A's Hashimoto meeting up with Ryuen. Also, Hashimoto brings along Kanzaki from Class B for this little chat. Apparently, Kanzaki is pissed at Ryuen for basically destroying Class B during the last exam. For a while now, Kanzaki has been supporting Honami, but he wants to take matters into his own hands and deal with Ryuen himself for the sake of Class B. So, he directly challenges Ayonokoji and reveals that he wants our beloved protagonist to get expelled. But of course, Ayonokoji isn't worried, and he even tells Ryuen to get good to give him some competition at least. That's some main character energy. Later, Tsukishiro speaks with Ayonokoji alone and reveals that another White Room student will join the school. Ayonokoji doesn't know who this student is, but they'll surely create a lot of trouble for Ayonokoji. Naturally, this student's ultimate goal is to get Ayonokoji expelled, because of course it is. Moving on from that, Suzune calls Ayonokoji and asks him to unleash his full genius potential since they're gunning for Class A now. However, Ayonokoji isn't interested in all that. He really just wants to enjoy the school while he can. So, Suzune suggests a competition between herself and Ayonokoji instead. Well, he agrees, but if Suzune loses, she has to join the student council like Manabu wanted. But of course, if Ayonokoji loses, he'll have to go all out from then on. Low-key, I'm actually rooting for Suzune now. The first episode of Season 4 kicks off in the White Room, where a certain someone has been tasked with forcing Ayonokoji out of the school within 4 months. And this White Room subject seems rather excited about this challenge. Look out, Ayonokoji. Back at school, where Class D are beginning their second year at the Advanced Nurturing School, Sai introduces a new system to Class D, the OAA, or the Overall Ability app, which displays each student's overall performance. So yeah, every student's abilities will be visible to the entire school, which will surely heat up competition. Oh, also, students can't intentionally hide their abilities to diminish their scores on the app. That is a big no-no. Sai then explains this year's first special exam. This time, second-year students must pair up with first-year students. This is a problem for Ayanokoji though, because he realizes that the unidentified White Room student can partner with him and sabotage the exam. As long as he partners with anybody else, he should be fine, and I kinda like those odds. Later, Ayanokoji runs into two first-year Class D students, Tsubasa Nanase, a calm, wise girl, and Hosen Kazuomi, an aggressive and very intimidating dude. Hosen is a loudmouth who constantly tries to insult Ken and keeps trying to start a fight. Then, Class C's Ryuen and his classmate Ibuki also arrive on the scene, and for a moment, it seems like Hosen will fight Ryuen as well. But the next moment, Nanase steps in and threatens to expose one of Hosen's secrets if he continues to be a jerk. So, well, Hosen decides to leave while making all sorts of angry faces. During all this, Ayanokoji pays attention to Nanase and wonders if she'll be a problem for him. The second episode kicks off with Takuya Yagami, a first-year student from Class B, speaking with Kushida. Apparently, Yagami was a year below Kushida in middle school. Meanwhile, Ayanokoji is trying to eliminate suspects that could be from the White Room. So, he asks Suzune if she also remembers Yagami. She went to the same school as them. However, Suzune says that she doesn't know him. That's because Suzune never paid much attention to people who didn't concern her. Meanwhile, Yagami, who looks like he's in love with Kushida, asks Kushida to partner with him for the special exam. Kushida isn't sure, so Yagami asks her to maybe sit on the idea for a while. Over with Suzune, she gets approached by Ichika Amazawa, a highly rated first year from Class A. For some reason, the golden girl Ichika wants to become Suzune's partner for the upcoming exam. However, Suzune says that Ichika should be Ken's partner instead, cause it's tough to find a partner for him. Aw, Ken. However, Ichika says she'll only partner with Ken if he, or any guy from Suzune's class, can cook a dish up to her standards. Of course, Ken can't cook at all, but Suzune remembers that Ayanokoji once boasted about his cooking. So, Suzune sees no problem with this plan. Yeah, I'm sure that Ayanokoji can find the time to play chef. Later, Ichika meets up with Ayanokoji and asks the guy to cook Tom Yum Goong soup. Well, with Suzune's help, Ayanokoji totally kills it and makes a delicious soup. Ichika agrees to become Ken's partner for the exam, but Ayanokoji is a bit concerned about this. Apparently, Ayanokoji believes that Ichika intentionally judged his dish generously, because in truth, it wasn't really that good. So, Ayanokoji starts to wonder if Ichika is the White Room student, and to feed more into Ayanokoji's suspicions, Ichika messages him asking for a private meeting. Ooh, something's cooking, pun intended. Elsewhere, Arisu learns that Ryuen has been offering points to first-year students to recruit them as his minions. So, Arisu matches his offers and turns the tables on Ryuen. At the same time, Ryuen reveals that he's just using the recruitment process to identify greedy and useful students whom he can exploit later. Sick bastard. Moving on, Suzune and Ayanokoji now meet Nanase to discuss a partnership between the first and second years of Class D. Apparently, both Nanase and Suzune's classmates need partners for the exam, so it's a win-win situation. Naturally, Nanase is up for it, but she reveals that Hosen won't like this idea one bit. That's a bummer. The third episode kicks off with Suzune and Ayanokoji meeting Nanase in the library again. Nanase reveals that she tried to convince Hosen, but the dude didn't budge at all. Regardless, Nanase wants to find a way for Class 1D and Class 2D to cooperate. So, Nanase promises to somehow bring Hosen to a meeting within 2 days. Great! That evening, Kei arrives at Ionokoji's room, and while studying, she notices that his academic rating on OAA is only a C. That has gotta be a glitch. Of course, Kei is shocked, but Ionokoji casually admits that he could score far higher if he wanted to. That's right, he's just taking things slow. But right then, Kei sees a red hair tie on Ionokoji's bed, so naturally, Kei believes some other girl has been in his room. Uh-oh. To make things worse, first-year Class D's Ichika suddenly arrives in Ionokoji's room. Oh, come on, this is not the time, Ichika. Apparently, Ichika is here to take back her red hair tie. At this point, Ionokoji explains to Kei that he cooked for Ichika in his room so that she would become Ken's partner. Unfortunately, Kei believes Ionokoji's story. Later, Ionokoji runs into Arisu, who knows that Ionokoji is looking for the mysterious White Room student. Arisu wants to be of help, but Ionokoji says, "Nah, I can handle this myself." So, Arisu moves on. Soon after that, two first-year Class C students approach Ionokoji to partner with him. These students are Riku Utomiya, who seems like a straightforward dude, and Sakurako Tsubaki, who kinda seems like a laid-back girl. But of course, Ionokoji can't say yes right away, so they all just exchange contact information and leave. During all this, Maya meets up with Kei, and Maya reveals that she loves Ionokoji. Since Kei has been dating her man, Maya loses her cool and slaps Kei. Oh, damn! But hey, Kei understands where Maya is coming from, so she doesn't react harshly. I mean, who wouldn't want to date the guy? Meanwhile, Ken reveals to Ionokoji that he has feelings for Suzune, and he will keep improving until Suzune accepts him. Aw, yeah, you keep working on it, man. The fourth episode kicks off with Hosen finally agreeing to meet Suzune, Ionokoji, Ken, and Nanase. Without wasting a second, Suzune suggests that Class 2D and Class 1D should work together in the exam. Both classes need each other, because most students still don't have partners, honestly. However, being the greedy bastard he is, Hosen wants a heck of a lot of private points for his class's cooperation. So, Suzune tells Hosen to buzz off. Later, Hosen lures everyone to an isolated area and even attacks Suzune to get her to transfer points. Ken tries to protect Suzune, but he loses miserably against Hosen. Oh no. At one point, Hosen even pulls out a knife and moves towards Ionokoji. But guess what? Ionokoji calmly grabs the knife with his bare hand like a total badass. Sheesh. Ionokoji also reveals that Hosen never intended to stab anyone. Instead, the plan was to make it look like Ionokoji stabbed him with a knife, creating grounds for Ionokoji's expulsion. What? There's more. Shockingly, Ionokoji reveals that Ichika is also involved in this plan with Hosen. Ionokoji further reveals that he knows about a special bounty placed on him by the school. Apparently, first-year students have been offered 20 million points if they could force Ionokoji to drop out, so the White Room student isn't the only one he needs to worry about. Golly! Of course, Hosen is pissed, but he's more scared because Ionokoji can get him expelled with this information. So, the big brute backs down and even accepts signing a mutual agreement with Class 2D to partner on the exam. Thanks to all this, the exam goes smoothly. And Ionokoji, well, he receives a perfect score. Afterward, we learn that Nanase isn't that sweet after all. Her cooperation was just an act with Suzune. Shockingly, Nanase's main objective was getting Ionokoji expelled. What's even more shocking is that getting Ionokoji expelled was the first-year student's special exam. What the actual hell, dude? So they all failed? Turns out, Nanase eventually chose to reveal the truth to Ionokoji instead of continuing the plan, allowing him to avoid expulsion. Why? What are you planning, Nanase? Finally, we see Ionokoji meeting up with Tsukishiro, who reveals that the mysterious White Room student has not exactly been following orders. Ain't that interesting. The 5th episode kicks off with Ayano Koji realizing that he can no longer hide his abilities. I mean, every student from the first year is going after him now, so he might as well go all out. That is why, during the first written test of the new term, Ayano Koji scores a perfect 100 in math. Yeah, he's the only student in the entire school to do so. I didn't think that was actually possible. What's even more shocking is that the test was intentionally designed to be extra hard, so nobody was expected to get 100. Naturally, Class 2D becomes suspicious and starts questioning Ayano Koji about whether he's a frickin' robot or whatever. However, before things can spiral out of control, Suzune steps in and covers for her expressionless friend. Suzune says that she already knew Ayano Koji's brilliance. However, she deliberately asked him to stay in the background during their first year so Ayano Koji wouldn't become a target for rival classes. Well, Suzune's cooked-up story works well, and the students believe her. For now, they don't need to know about the creepy facility he grew up in. Meanwhile, Suzune officially joins the student council because of the pact she made with Ayano Koji before the exam. Since she lost to Ayano Koji, she's got no bloody choice but to fulfill her promise. Then, Suzune talks with Ayano Koji about the mysterious 20 million point bounty, and Ayano Koji says that Nagumo, the current student council president, may be connected to it. Of course he is. So, Suzune joins the council to keep an eye on Nagumo's actions. Next, we learn that even though Hozen's plan failed, the bounty on Ayano Koji's head is still on. Because of this, Ayano Koji continues investigating the identity of the cheeky White Room student, and at this stage, his primary suspects are Ichika and Nanase. Moving on from that mystery, Sae announces a brand new special exam because why not? During the summer vacation, students will take an 8-day trip on a luxurious cruise ship. Really? Again with the cruise? However, before the students can enjoy the cruise, they must clear another survival-style challenge. Oh, God. At this point, we don't know exactly what this exam is, but we know that it'll bring students from different classes together. So, yep, it'll definitely give the first years another opportunity to target Ayano Koji. In episode 6, a few months before the special exam, the school reveals more details. Apparently, the exam is called Desert Island Survival Test. Sounds more like a reality TV show than a school exam. According to the rules, students are allowed to form small groups, and multiple groups can combine into larger teams, but only up to 6 members. Students from different classes can also join the same group. Doing so means any rewards will be split between those classes. Now, Class 2D begins discussing strategies, and Suzune suggests forming alliances with other classes. Basically, she wants classes B, C, and D moving against Class A together. Smart move, but Suzune knows that Arisu will likely anticipate such a move. As Suzune expected, Arisu approaches Honami to team up first. Seeing how things are still unclear, Suzune instructs her classmates not to rush into the forming alliances plan. Right then, we learn that the bottom 5 groups in the exam will face expulsion unless someone spends enough points to save them. And since Class D ain't exactly all that rich, they can't really save multiple classmates if they end up below the cutoff line. On top of that, if an entire group drops out of the test, all of its members will automatically be expelled from school. Despite Suzune's warning not to join other classes for now, Satsuki, one of Class D's students, joins 2 students from Class B. This is a big problem, because Class D's Kanji has feelings for Satsuki, and he wanted to be in a group with her. What's worse is that Kanji learns that one of her new teammates is Kyogo, a Class B student who apparently likes Satsuki as well. Sure, this may seem like a cheap teenage drama on the surface, but no. Ayano Koji and Suzune think that the situation could affect Kanji's performance during the survival test. He could literally die. Meanwhile, Ayano Koji decides to take the exam completely alone. Since he still has that 20 million point bounty on his head, he can't really trust any of his teammates. During the exam preparation phase, students will also receive special cards through the school's app. Ayano Koji receives a trial card, which will increase the class points that he may earn by 50%. However, if Ayano Koji fails to finish within the top 30%, his class will suffer a penalty. That sounds risky. The 7th episode gives us a chance to peek at the other side, how the first years are preparing for the upcoming desert island survival camp. We see Class 1B's Yagami gathering the leaders of the first year classes to discuss strategy. Interestingly, Yagami wants the first year leaders to work together rather than fight each other. And guess what? Everyone agrees. Even the prick Hosen has no problem with this plan. After this, though, Yagami meets with Ayano Koji. Yagami reveals that the student council president Nagumo personally announced the 20 million point bounty, and acting chairman Tsukishiro was also there. Of course, Ayano Koji wants to know why in the hell Yagami is telling him all that. Doesn't Yagami want 12 million points? However, Yagami reveals that he has no interest in the bounty. But of course, Ayano Koji has his doubts about Yagami. I mean, no one can throw away the chance to earn so many points. Once Yagami leaves, Kushida tells Ayano Koji that she actually wants Yagami expelled because he knows details about her past. Yeah, this girl wants every other person expelled. Later, Class 1 sees Riku and Tsubaki meet Ayano Koji privately. These two want Ayano Koji's help in getting Hosen expelled. Why? Because Hosen was responsible for the expulsion of a classmate named Hatano, who was actually a really nice dude. Now, many students in Class 1D think that they would be happier if Hosen disappeared from the school. Ayano Koji listens to everything carefully, but he doesn't agree to help them yet. Instead, Ayano Koji observes both Riku and Tsubaki to find out if they could be connected to the White Room. Cutting back to Hosen's group, we see that despite agreeing to Yagami's plans earlier, this prick has his own scheme. That's why, along with Nanase, he approaches Ichika and invites her to join their team on the island exam. Ichika agrees, but there's a catch. Ichika says that if they successfully force Ayano Koji out of school, she wants the entire 20 million point bounty for herself.
But I still feel like I deserve a little something for helping out.
Jesus, guys. Leave the poor Ayano Koji alone. The 8th episode kicks off with Ryuen meeting up with Ayano Koji and Class A's Katsuragi. First, Ryuen convinces Katsuragi to join his team for the Desert Island Survival Exam. Since Ryuen is hell-bent on defeating Arisu, Katsuragi still hates Arisu for getting his friend expelled during the class poll exam. It's a perfect team-up. Once that's done, Ryuen speaks with Ayano Koji. But not because he wants him as a teammate. Instead, Ryuen wants the trial card that Ayano Koji received earlier. For some reason, Ryuen wants the risky point-boosting card. But in exchange, Ayano Koji asks for Class C's half-off card, which apparently brings down the penalty for losing in the exam by, well, half. Apparently, Ayano Koji wants to use the half-off card to save Kei in case she fails. Aww. Meanwhile, we learn that Suzune has also decided to enter the exam without a group. She plans to observe the situation and form alliances during the test itself. Oh, that's actually smart. Finally, we see Tsukishiro speaking about Ayano Koji with Nanase. The old jerk asks Nanase to help him get Ayano Koji expelled, to which Nanase happily agrees.
Yes.
Wait, is Nanase the White Room student? No. The 9th episode kicks off with a brief flashback to Nanase arriving home. However, someone, possibly her father, has tragically hanged himself. Oh god, that's awful. Now, for some reason, Nanase blames Ayano Koji for this person's death. Next, we see that the students are already on the ship, on their way to another damn island. However, before the exam officially begins, the school explains the rules in detail. Apparently, the test will last for 2 full weeks, and students must earn points by traveling across the island. They can score points by reaching designated locations before a certain time limit expires. The students can also earn points by completing special tasks that appear throughout the exam. Sounds simple enough. Now, to help manage the competition, every student receives a digital wristband. These devices constantly track everyone's location and physical condition. Not only that, but the wristbands will notify the students about upcoming objectives. Finally, the students step onto the island, and we see Ayanokoji doing the best he can to survive and kick every challenge's ass. But after a couple of days, Ayanokoji runs into none other than Nanase. Shockingly, Nanase doesn't invite Ayanokoji to her group or whatever. Instead, she simply asks to travel alongside Ayanokoji. That's weird, sure, but Nanase promises that she won't interfere with his strategy. Ayanokoji thinks about this for a couple of seconds and eventually agrees. What could the harm be? The 10th episode kicks off with Ayanokoji completing one challenge after another, and then there's Nanase just tagging along with him. After doing this for days, Ayanokoji comes across Ken's group, so they decide to camp together. And just because luck is on Ayanokoji's side, Kei also arrives at the exact same spot with her group. So now, after being separated for days, Ayanokoji and Kei are back together. Now, while sitting under the stars and holding hands, Ayanokoji asks Kei if she's keeping an eye on a certain someone. Of course, Kei is doing a good job as Ayanokoji's girlfriend/spy, but she's worried that Ayanokoji is spending so much time with another girl. Yeah, she's jealous of Nanase. So, to build trust, Ayanokoji decides to have his first kiss with Kei right then and there. Oh, that is so romantic. Later that night, everyone hears the emergency alarm, which means that someone nearby is in trouble. So Ayanokoji, along with Nanase and Ken's group, decides to help them. The 11th episode begins with Ayanokoji and his gang that needs help. Turns out it's Satsuki's group, the same girl who Kanji likes. The guys from Satsuki's group are knocked out, but Satsuki is nowhere to be found. Oh, I hope she's okay. After looking for a while, Kanji finds Satsuki, and she reveals that someone pushed her group off a ledge. That is how they all got knocked out. However, she couldn't see who actually did it, and right then, Nanase sees someone running away from the scene, so she tries to chase them down. Sadly, Nanase fails to catch this mysterious runner, but she does see that this person is wearing a red hair tie. Well, that certainly points to Ichika, the one who made a deal with Hosen. By this time, the acting chairman and Sae arrive on the scene to take Satsuki's group back to the starting point because they're injured, which means they're out of the exam. However, Kanji convinces Satsuki not to give up and to keep moving ahead. At the same time, Ayanokoji secretly asks Sae to look into something for him back at the starting point. Ooh, more mystery! Now, as Ken's group goes on their merry way, Ayanokoji and Nanase also move ahead to earn more points. At one point, Ayanokoji runs into Konji, who's currently in 4th position in this exam. Man, he's really something. Then, Ayanokoji competes with Konji in a tug-of-war competition, and it seems like Ayanokoji intentionally lets Konji win. Next, we cut to Yagami's group, which includes Class 1C's Riku and Tsubaki. Shockingly, Riku reveals that she and Tsubaki also intend to throw Ayanokoji out of the school. In fact, these two want Yagami to help them as well, cause if he doesn't, Riku and Tsubaki threaten to harm Kushida. Since Yagami cares so damn much about Kushida, Riku threatens to beat Yagami's butt if he doesn't reveal what role Kushida plays in all of this. Yagami initially tries to resist, but eventually he agrees. The 12th episode kicks off with Nanase finally dropping the act and revealing that she wants to get Ayano Koji expelled. To do that, Nanase says that she intends to injure Ayano Koji. Good luck, sister. Once he's injured, the school will take Ayano Koji back to the camp and he'll be expelled for failing the exam. But there's one teeny tiny problem. Nanase can't even land a direct hit on Ayano Koji.
You're still able to stand!
God damn. So, Nanase does something shocking. She basically pulls forward her other personality, whom she calls Eiichiro. Wait, do we really have a multiple personality thing going on here? Eiichiro reveals that he's the son of the man whom Ayano Koji's father killed. Yeah, Eiichiro is talking about the same man who hanged himself, I guess. However, Ayano Koji blocks every attack from Eiichiro as well. And then, Ayano Koji tells Eiichiro that she's still Nanase and that this isn't a real multiple personality disorder. In reality, Nanase has been forcing this second personality as a defense mechanism. And as it turns out, Ayano Koji is spot on, because after listening to all this, Nanase just breaks down like a child who's hurt. Aw man, now I feel bad. Meanwhile, we see Yagami hanging out with Kushida, and he knows about Nanase's plans against Ayano Koji, so he reveals all of her plans to Kushida. Not only that, but he asks Kushida to record Ayano Koji's fight with Nanase, hoping that they'll record Ayano Koji beating the crap out of Nanase. Sick bastards! However, before Kushida can even reach the fighting location, she's confronted by Ichika. At this point, Ichika reveals that she knows what Kushida did to her classmates in middle school. How? Well, it's still a mystery. However, the shocking part is that Ichika is here not to get Ayano Koji expelled, but to save him from getting expelled. What is going on? For some crazy reason, Ichika is crazy about Ayano Koji, so she beats the crap out of Kushida. And since Ichika also knows about Kushida's secret about her spreading rumors in middle school, Kushida can't do crap against Ichika. Elsewhere, we see Honami listening to a conversation between the acting chairman Tsukishiro and one of the teachers. Tsukishiro is aware that Sae and Mashima, the homeroom teacher of Class B, are helping Ayano Koji. Honami also hears a mention of the White Room, and that these sickos plan on burying Ayano Koji if he survives till the last day of the exam. The hell? What do you mean by bury him? Sadly for Honami though, Tsukishiro spots her and threatens to expel students from Honami's class if she opens her mouth. Elsewhere, Nanase reveals to Ayano Koji that, in reality, Eiichiro was the son of Matsuo, the man who helped Ayano Koji escape the White Room. Eiichiro was like a brother to Nanase, and after Matsuo's death, Eiichiro also gave up on his life and hanged himself. Oh man. So Nanase was pissed at Ayano Koji's father, but Tsukishiro directed that anger towards Ayano Koji himself, even though he never did anything wrong. So yeah, Nanase isn't from the White Room. She's just someone that old prick Tsukishiro used against Ayano Koji. But hey, Ayano Koji says let bygones be bygones, and asks Nanase to help him against his father and Tsukishiro instead. For a guy who doesn't care about friends, he's sure good at making friends. The 13th episode kicks off with Ichika, right where Ayano Koji and Nanase are having their conversation. Right after seeing Ichika, Nanase reveals that it was her who hurt Satsuki's group. Not only that, but Ichika has also messed up her GPS to hide her location. Then, without thinking even for a second, Ichika reveals that she's the assassin sent from the White Room. Oh my god, really? Actually, she certainly seems crazy enough. Of course, Ayano Koji doesn't believe Ichika at first because, according to him, she would gain nothing after revealing her identity. However, Ichika says that she was sent here because Tsukishiro thought she would be jealous of Ayano Koji. But what the old geezer didn't know is that Ichika actually loves him. So, she revealed her identity to let Ayano Koji know that she isn't his enemy. And right after saying that, Ichika leaves the scene. After she leaves, Ayano Ayano sees the footprints on the ground and deduces someone else had been watching them before Ichika arrived on the scene. Oh my god, who now? What's even more concerning is that this mysterious person was planning to attack Ayano. Later, inside the tent, Ayano tells Nanase that there's a chance Ichika didn't hurt Satsuki's group. It might have been someone else. Then, Ayano reveals that he's been tracking the location of every student on the island. Why? To study patterns, of course. Information is king. The next day, Nanase decides to go after Ichika to get some answers, while Ayano continues his journey alone. On his way, Ayano comes across several other students, and eventually, he manages to get his hands on a transceiver. Now, Ayano uses the device to communicate with Arisu. Interesting. The 14th episode kicks off with Ikuto, the student council's vice president, realizing that Konji is in second spot in the survival test. Nagumo's group is in first, but Konji is just 6 points behind Nagumo. Dude, Konji is killing it in this exam. Ikuto doesn't like this at all, so he decides to send his teams after Konji. Ikuto and his ally, Mikitani, a Class B student, track down Konji and try to convince him to stay put for at least one day. Ikuto is with a bunch of guys to scare off Konji, but of course, Konji asks all of them to just buzz off. As expected, Mikitani and the rest of Ikuto's guys decide to fight Konji. And of course, Konji beats the crap out of all of them. Ikuto is surprised to see that Konji is so darn powerful, but he is confident that he'll find Konji's weakness. Meanwhile, we see Nanase reaching out to Ayano while he's sleeping. Nanase tells Ayano that several first-year students want to force him out of the exam. Then, we cut to a small flashback, where we learn that Hosen wants Nanase to get close to Ayano. However, Nanase reports that it isn't working. At the same time, Riku contacts Hosen through a transceiver. Basically, Riku asks for Hosen's help in saving the first-year students who aren't doing well on the exam. But hey, Hosen doesn't care one bit about saving anyone, which obviously gets Riku all riled up. Right then, Tsubaki steps in and speaks to Hosen. Tsubaki reveals that she plans to get the senior players expelled, especially the ones who are playing solo. That'll help prevent the weak first years from getting kicked out. However, Tsubaki realizes that the real target of this exam is Ayano, but he's always on the move. So, she plans to surround the guy with a huge group until he has nowhere to run. Well, Hosen likes this plan very much and agrees to help. Back to the present, Ayano thanks Nanase for the heads up, but he's not surprised that the first years are coming after him. Yeah, just another Tuesday for Ayano. The next day, Yagami meets up with Riku and Tsubaki to tell them something important. Apparently, Yagami managed to get his hands on a tablet that tracks Ayano route, so they can now follow his exact location in real time. Yeah, that's not good for our boy. Yagami also reveals a backup plan. Apparently, if the plan to force Ayano to drop out doesn't work, they can try to stop him from reaching his checkpoints in time, which would eventually tank his score anyway. Right then, Tsubaki reveals that she already got her hands on a similar tracking tablet, so she's one step ahead. You can plan whatever you want, but Ayano will not lose. Finally, Tsubaki orders multiple teams to surround Ayano. The dude checks his tablet and realizes that a massive group is closing in around him. However, he isn't bothered one bit.
They must be trying to cut off my escape. In that case, it's time.
The 15th episode kicks off with Ayano trying to dodge a massive group of first years without getting dragged into a fight. However, Tsubaki is constantly tracking Ayano location and is confident that her guys will corner him. However, things start to fall apart real fast. Surprisingly, while following Ayanokoji, Tsubaki's guys run into some second years who are blocking their path. Ooh, so we have the second year students supporting Ayanokoji, or is it something else? At this point, Tsubaki realizes that someone is secretly working against her from the shadows. Turns out that this someone is none other than Arisu. Yeah, I kinda predicted this already. Now, we see a flashback of when Ayanokoji contacted Arisu after getting a transceiver. Basically, Ayanokoji predicted that the first-year students would resort to violence against him. So, he asked Arisu for help. Surprisingly, Arisu agreed, and in return, Ayanokoji promised to return the favor when the time comes. Meanwhile, we see that Hosen has finally caught up to Ayanokoji himself, and he's too damn excited to fight the guy. But right then, Ryuen shows up and asks Ayanokoji to run so he can handle Hosen all alone. Ryuen doesn't like Ayanokoji, but he just hates this cocky Hosen guy even more. So, once Ayanokoji leaves, Ryuen starts to fight Hosen head-on. And while it's a brutal fight, Ryuen manages to beat Hosen's ass after calling in his friends for help. God damn! Ryuen really didn't hold back. Of course, fighting is against the rules, so Ryuen decides to withdraw from the exam alongside Hosen once the teachers show up. Ryuen teamed up with Class A's Katsuragi for this exam after all, and he feels like he's given Katsuragi everything needed to pass the test. Tsubaki learns that Hosen and Ryuen are out of the exam. Hosen was a crucial piece of Tsubaki's plan, so yeah, she's pissed. To make things worse, Riku went out alone to confront Hayato Kito, a Class A student and Arisu's most trusted ally. Apparently, Riku sensed that Kito was coming after Tsubaki, so he wants to stop the big brute from reaching her. As expected, Riku couldn't defeat Kito because he's too darn scary. But shockingly, Kito decides to go a different way on his own. The next day, Arisu reaches out to Ayanokoji and tells him that Honami has suddenly disappeared. However, Arisu tracks Honami's GPS and realizes that she's somewhere near Ayanokoji, and it's up to him to find her. Well, it doesn't take long for Ayanokoji to run into Honami, who tells her everything that has happened. Honami reveals that Tsukishiro wants to make sure Ayanokoji doesn't make it back if he passes the test. Tsukishiro threatened Honami to keep quiet, but she clearly couldn't. Right then, Honami confesses to Ayanokoji that she's in love with him and wants him to be safe. Aww, that's cute. Of course, Ayanokoji doesn't love Honami back, but he still thanks her for the heads up. Ayanokoji continues moving forward despite the risk, and after a while he runs into Nagumo. Turns out, Nagumo has always known that Ayanokoji is a badass, so he's excited to challenge the boy. Nagumo also reveals that it was Tsukishiro's idea to put a 20 million point bounty on Ayanokoji's head. Regardless, Ayanokoji has zero interest in facing Nagumo, as he thinks the student council president isn't worth the time. However, Nagumo still tries to block Ayanokoji's path, so Ayanokoji knocks him down with a single frickin' punch! Wow! Dude literally spelled out Ayanokoji's name before getting knocked out. The final episode of Season 4 kicks off with Ayanokoji finally running into Tsukishiro and Shiba, one of the teachers and Tsukishiro's close allies. As expected, Tsukishiro asks Ayanokoji to leave the island and the school right away. But of course, Ayanokoji has no plans of going back to the White Room, so he gets ready to fight Tsukishiro and Shiba instead. Yeah, it's finally time to beat Tsukishiro's ass. Meanwhile, Suzune is heading towards Ayanokoji's location. Turns out, Suzune received a secret message revealing the location where Ayanokoji will be expelled. On her way, Suzune runs into Ibuki, and then class sees Ichika also joins in. Turns out it was none other than Ichika who secretly left that message outside Suzune's tent. Apparently, Ichika is jealous that Suzune is close to Ayanokoji, so he starts to fight her. Ibuki also decides to help Suzune against Ichika because a little teamwork doesn't hurt anyone. Surprisingly, Suzune and Ibuki manage to defeat Ichika after some struggle. Right then, Ichika reveals a severe injury on her stomach. No, Ichika didn't get this injury during her fight with Suzune and Ibuki. Instead, she got it while fighting someone else. However, Ichika doesn't reveal to Suzune who exactly fought her before them. I guess that's a mystery for next season. Now that Ichika has backed down, Suzune moves ahead to find Ayanokoji. Now, we cut to Ayanokoji's fight, and it looks like the dude's doing a decent job fighting Tsukishiro and Shiba single-handedly. But then, Kiryuen, a third-year Class B student, shows up to help Ayanokoji. Kiryuen is not exactly a friend of Ayanokoji, but she hates the fact that two grown-up assholes are ganging up on Ayanokoji. Also, Kiryuen is a total badass when it comes to kicking ass, so she might really turn the tables on Tsukishiro. So, Kiryuen decides to take on Shiba while Ayanokoji handles Tsukishiro. During the fight, Tsukishiro tries to tase Ayanokoji, who catches him and easily stops the old man. You seriously thought that you could tase Ayanokoji? Stupid old dude. By this time, Sae arrives on the scene on a boat, which forces Tsukishiro and Shiba to end the fight. Surprisingly, Ayanokoji reported earlier to the school that some students collapsed at this very location. Of course, that's not true, but that report was enough for the school to send Sae to the location. Unfortunately for Tsukishiro, he can't fight a student in front of other teachers, so he's forced to leave. But before he does, Tsukishiro tells Ayanokoji that Ichika is a white room failure, so she can stay at the school for as long as she wants. Perfect! That's what we want anyway. Once Tsukishiro leaves, Kiryuen tells Ayanokoji she may need some answers later, since this whole thing was just too weird. Suzune also arrives at the location, but Ayanokoji has already handled the situation on his own. After all this mess, the desert island exam has finally ended, and all the students are back on the cruise ship. There, we learned that Ryuen sorta helped Ayanokoji against Hosen on Arisu's request. Finally, we get the exam results, and fortunately, all of our favorite characters are safe. When it comes to the top 3 though, Arisu's group has secured the 3rd position. In the 2nd position, we have Nagumo's group, and guess who's secured the 1st position? Well, that's none other than, wait for it, Konji. Are we sure Konji isn't the main protagonist of this story? Just kidding. I'm sure Ayanokoji predicted this as well. Okay guys, I've watched enough planning and scheming. Now it's time for me to switch things up a little. Meanwhile, you guys can feel free to click on the link on screen to watch another one of my videos, but in the meantime, peace!